Agency to the Redevelopment Agency and the Housing Authority of San Carlos regular meeting. To adhere to San Mateo County Health Officers' March 16th, 2020 shelter-in-place order, this City Council meeting will be held via teleconference and according with Governor Newsom's Executive Order N29-20. There will not be a physical location from which the public may attend. However, the public will have access to remotely observe the meeting and address the council. And I will also announce later how you can contact us during the meeting. All right. Let us all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Announce later how you can contact us during the meeting. I pledge allegiance. Let us all rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. And to the Republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And say the Pledge of Allegiance. And to the Republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I apologize if there was a little bit of some disconnection there. There is a little bit of a delay in our speaking and what you are seeing on streaming live or on watching TV. Okay, we're going to move on to any changes in the order of the agenda. Or is there anyone wanting to change the order of the agenda tonight? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to item 4, presentations. First thing we're going to have is a presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. And we're going to move on to item 4, presentations. First thing we're going to have is a presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. And we're going to move on to item 4, presentations. First thing we're going to have is a presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. And we're going to move on to item 4, presentations. First thing we're going to have is a presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. And we're going to move on to item 4, presentations. First thing we're going to have is a presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. And we're going to move on to item 4, presentation. First thing we're going to have is a presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. And we're going to move on to item 4, presentation. First thing we're going to have is a presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. Can you hear that? We're going to move on to
yeah, sorry, our IT is looking into this issue.
Presentation from the Community Foundation on their response to COVID-19. Can you hear that? We're going to move on to item 4.
I can hear you. I'm just not.
Crystal. Community Foundation on their response to.
Okay.
Okay.
I think they.
Are
they.
we okay, Crystal?
I think so. They were able to stop that.
It's a continued loop. We apologize.
Do you want to repeat that, Ron? I didn't quite catch it. Jessica, are you going to be giving us a presentation?
I will be. So I don't know. Are you ready to go?
Yeah, I hope you just don't hear me 27 times. Jessica, are you going to be giving us a presentation?
I will be. So I don't know. Are you ready to go?
You know, it seems to be tied to the share screen.
Yeah.
Let me try this again one more time, and if it is, maybe we'll have to try without this presentation. You know, it seems to be tied to the share screen. Yeah, it's definitely tied to the share screen.
Would you like for me to share my screen then? Would that, or is that not acceptable?
No, we can do that.
We'll see if it's creating the same problem.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It does say that the host has disabled screen sharing, so maybe it's not possible.
Okay, I've made you a co-host, Jessica, so let's see if that works. Technology.
What do y'all see?
That looks good.
Does it? Okay. Then we will get started.
Great.
All right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I am Jessica Yang, President of the Community Foundation of San Carlos. It is my honor to present to you an update on our activities on behalf of our all-volunteer board and COVID-19 response committee. With COVID-19, we are handed a unique opportunity to not just tell everyone about what we're going to do, but actually show you what we're doing to amplify the heroic work of local nonprofits and community members. I'd like to thank the City Council and the City of San Carlos for your support in establishing the foundation so that we are ready to take impactful action now. On March 22nd, the San Carlos Chamber of Commerce introduced us to a local family who wanted to make a gift to support our community members impacted by the pandemic. With a generous gift from the Holmes family, we established the COVID-19 Response Fund and developed a response plan. Moving to the next slide. There we go. We devised a three-pronged approach to support our community: residents, community, business, and nonprofits. In early April, we granted emergency funds totaling over $150,000, $33,000 of which went to 4 area hospitals to provide aid to frontline hospital workers for purchase and also for purchase of personal protective equipment. We also contributed $125,000 to provide meals and core services to our community. In partnership with the City of San Carlos and a local community volunteer coordinator, Sandy Kraft, the Neighbors to Neighbors Helping Neighbors program was launched. I will speak more to this later. We've also been posting community resources on our website to share with our community different things that they can do during the shelter in place. On the business front, the Community Foundation has contributed $50,000 to the Opportunity Fund and have earmarked those funds to support small businesses within a 5-mile radius of San Carlos. The Opportunity Fund is a nonprofit agency which is also administering the small business relief funds from San Mateo County Strong and the San Jose Strong campaigns. To further our support for San Carlos businesses, we are posting updates from the Chamber of Commerce, Samsera, and other business resources onto our website for easy access. We have also consolidated local GoFundMe fundraiser links onto our website where supporters can quickly find and donate. On the nonprofit front, we fielded a survey to local nonprofits about their needs and impacts back in mid-March. For those who responded that their needs were volunteer related, we connected them to our growing list of community volunteers. Some organizations that have taken advantage of some of our volunteer support have been Peninsula Volunteers, also known as Meals on Wheels, Villages of San Mateo County, Samaritan House, and One Life Counseling Center. Just this last Friday, during One Life Counseling Center's grocery distribution, over 40 volunteers participated. We are also doing what we can in making connections. So we learned from the PTACC Coordinating Council for San Carlos that they have a gift card grocery distribution program to support district families of children. We have been able to share out this opportunity with several local families who have reached out for help through our Neighbors Helping Neighbors campaign. We were also able to connect Greg St. Clair, the owner of Town, to provide meals alongside the groceries during the One Life Counseling groceries distribution this past Friday. On April 20th, we kicked off our COVID-19 response grant program. This is a rolling application where our grant committee reviews and recommends grant awards every 2 to 3 weeks. We are scheduled to award our first grants this Friday, May 1st. We urge all nonprofits that are impacted to apply now, as this is a rolling program. The Community Foundation has committed $50,000 to support the response fund and will continue to fundraise from generous donors. Our fundraising goal is $250,000, and already generous donors have already come forth with a limited time dollar for dollar match up to $100,000 for all donations made before May 31st. So moving on to talking a little bit more about the Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. This program has been a labor of love by Sandy Kraft, our volunteer coordinator. Sandy started organizing volunteers on Nextdoor back in mid-March. Combining the volunteers that she sourced through Nextdoor with the city's intake program, Sandy has secured over 280 volunteers and fielded 62 requests for help. Several of the helpers/helpees have established a recurring supporting relationship for the remainder of the shelter-in-place period. As there are many more volunteers than those in need in San Carlos, Sandy has created impact teams to organize an upcoming blood drive with support of the city Parks and Recs, make care packages and greeting cards for seniors and first responders. Now I want to share a brief story of how a single family's help request was fulfilled by an outpouring of support from our neighbors. The request came in Saturday night of Easter weekend. The mother is immunocompromised with cancer undergoing chemo. She cannot work as a nanny or Uber driver due to the shelter in place. The father lost his restaurant job over a month ago, so there is no family income. They have 2 children, 9 years old and 12 years old, who attend our local schools. The help they requested was simply for a blood pressure monitor, some basic cleaning supplies, and some toys for the children to celebrate Easter. Sandy sent out a request for volunteers that evening, and by the next day, 14 different families supplied everything on the list and more, from a bottle of Clorox to brand new paints for the daughter. This is, so on the screen, you see a quote from the mother thanking the generosity of the community. And here is a photo from last Friday's food donation over at One Life Counseling. So thank you, Honorable Mayor, City Council members, and City staff for your time this evening and your ongoing support and partnership. I'd also like to thank the Holmes family, the Chamber of Commerce, and our community volunteers who are making all this work possible. As I close this evening, I urge everyone with the ability to join us in support of our community by donating to the COVID-19 Response Fund during our dollar for dollar matching period. You can see updates on where your contributions are making impact by visiting our website, cfsancarlos.org, and following us on social media. So I want to conclude with saying, stay healthy and safe, and stay San Carlos strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessa. That was a great presentation. I don't think anybody foresaw the true value of the Community Foundation when this all began. I don't think anybody had any idea that we we would be encountering something like this, where this organization would be in an incredibly well-positioned place to help out. Do any of my fellow councilmen have questions that they'd like to ask of Jessica? Mark?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Jessica, I second everything Ron just said. And thank you very much to all of the volunteers as well, and to the Holmes family and everybody else who has donated financial support and other stuff too. It's just truly amazing. The question I had last week on a county update call, I had heard a report from somebody at Second Harvest where they were, among other things, talking about problems that they were experiencing with their supply chain in terms of the way in which they get food and stuff. And I just was wondering whether in your dealings with the various pantry organizations, if you've heard similar things, and if so, if you have any thoughts about how we might try and address those.
So we did hear, in fact, it was just 2 days after we made our contribution of $50,000 to Second Harvest, we heard from One Life Counseling Service that they were not able to secure the supply they had requested. And so at that point, I reached out directly to ask what was happening. And they did say that things were slowing down on their supply chain, but they were willing and able to fulfill orders within the next week. And since then, what I've heard was everything from, at least from One Life Counseling, they were able to secure what they originally were getting was about 3,000 pounds of food. For the last Friday distribution, they received 9,000 pounds of food. So there was no holdup at all for last Friday's distribution. And so I believe that supply chain situation has been addressed. As a stipulation for our contribution to Second Harvest was that the monies should be focused to addressing the San Carlos community needs first and foremost. And then from there, any residual we would gladly share beyond our borders to other communities. So as far as I understand, the supply chain seems to have resolved itself.
Great, thank you very much.
Welcome.
All right, thank you, Mark. Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica, for that great presentation. I too signed up for the Neighbor Helping Neighbor program, and I would just want to give kudos to Sandy Kraft for her awesome efforts in helping me find an opportunity, and so many other members of our community. She's just done a really phenomenal job, so I'd like to give her credit. My question for you, Jessica, is could you please just maybe give a little more details about the $50,000 that went to the Opportunity Fund, and what the application is for businesses in our community to hopefully tap some of those funds?
So I can answer what I know currently. So we are in the final discussion phases with the Opportunity Fund. We've been working with them for the last week or so about our contribution. So the Opportunity Fund is a non-profit organization that services like microloans to small businesses. And so they have been supporting all of San Mateo County and have been tapped by Silicon Valley Community Foundation to help administer any small business related financial difficulties. So our guidance to them was we didn't necessarily just want to contribute the $50,000 to the San Mateo County Strong, because we wanted to focus our monies locally to San Carlos, and they have indicated that they can focus it within a 5-mile radius of San Carlos. In terms of the application process, that we are still undergoing the final information, and as soon as we get that information, we will make sure that it's available for our local business members on our website, and we will share that with the Chamber of Commerce as well as with the city to help push that information out to our local businesses.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Laura.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jessica, for the presentation. I've been getting asked many questions by the community about how is the Community Foundation helping. I've been anxiously awaiting this presentation. I know that you have all been working so hard behind the scenes, as has Sandy Kraft. I got wind of her efforts early on in this effort. I did have a question for you, but it was just asked. So thank you for all the good works you and the team are doing, and keep doing it. And if there's anything we can do to continue to help support, please let us know.
Thank you. Just so everybody is aware, we have a meeting on a weekly basis with city staff, and they've been wonderful partners in moving a lot of the programs forward. So for example, Sandy has pulled together a blood drive, which Red Cross had pretty much canceled everything. And with the support of the Parks and Recs Department, we were able to secure the space over at the Youth Center for socially distanced, safe, accessible blood donations, and more information on that will be to come. So the city has been very, very helpful throughout this entire process, and it's been a pleasure to work with them.
Okay, Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. Jessica, thank you so much for the presentation. It was awesome, and I'm glad to see all the work that's being done in the community. And Sandy, thank you for all your, I think she was on before, or maybe still on, for her support and all her work. I had a chance with my daughter to do some deliveries of food this past Friday, which was awesome and a great opportunity. So can you share a little bit about, I had two questions. One, you've got your dollar for dollar challenge grant coming in, everything. What's sort of the intention sort of in the next phase? I mean, do you expect that you'll do more to businesses and residents as well? Or do you think this next sort of round will be more focused on the nonprofits? And then I had a quick second follow-up after.
Okay. Well, the donations right now, the fund that we're raising is primarily to support the nonprofits, and those nonprofits are in turn being assessed. Their applications are being assessed by how much of a community will be supported and serviced. Those that have been impacted. So the intent is to amplify the work of these nonprofits as they service our communities, and so that's our current plan. But we know that things are changing constantly. Everything is very fluid. So as things change, we can definitely discuss as, a board, as well as, in our weekly touch points with the city on potentially what needs there are. But our intent for the $250,000 goal is that all of that will be immediately turned around to support the nonprofits that have been impacted and their community members that have been impacted as well.
Great. And then just as a quick follow-up, you've got this campaign going. And Jeff may be able to help with this answer as well. What can we do as from the city perspective to help support that and do outreach and let the community know about what this drive and what you're doing and all the great work that you guys are doing?
So we've gotten the good support. We've gotten support from Jeff and the city that the city endorses this nonprofit, this fundraising program. So I encourage all city council members and members who, of the community to help just share this message out. We have posted the fundraising information on our Facebook page as well as on our website. I have it still on the screen here. So please take a look and share on social media, share with your personal networks. We really do want to take advantage of this generous donors. We actually have two generous donors who have contributed to this dollar for dollar matching, which is how we were able to hit the $100,000 mark. So we want to get every single dollar we can from them in order to get us to our goal, so we can support our nonprofits and therefore through the nonprofits support our community during this process.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks for all your work.
Thank you again, Jessica. Again, great presentation. We are fortunate to have the Community Foundation as part of our community now. So thanks again.
Thank you all for making this possible for us.
Okay, we're gonna.
Ron, through the chair.
Hello?
Yes, Ron, it's Mark.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Well, yes.
Through the chair, I just had a quick question. I know we're going to be talking about philanthropic funding later on tonight, but I had a follow-up question for staff, which is there anything that restricts us from, as a city, making a donation of some of our general funds to the Community Foundation program that Jessica just outlined?
Councilmember Olbert, in response to your question, those types of gifts can be made to nonprofits with identified public purpose, and I think the council's already made that determination really in making the seed money grant to the foundation to support the community. So in short, there's nothing legally preventing you from making it a grant should you choose to, but obviously because it hasn't been agendized tonight, we would need to consider that at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Ron, I'll just ask that perhaps we can discuss that either at agenda setting or at the philanthropic donation item later in the meeting. Not the specifics of it, but the concept.
Right. Okay. Thanks. All right. Any other comments or questions before we move on? Okay.
Actually, I do want to make a quick comment. I think I didn't answer one of Council Member Rack's questions with regards to monies for supporting small businesses. So the big donation from the Holmes family, they did earmark a chunk of that money to go to support small businesses. It was through working with us that we identified Opportunity Fund as a place that would help us administer those dollars. So if there were any generous donors of the community who want to support businesses, small businesses, we can definitely help sort of push the funds over to Opportunity Fund and have them also earmarked for San Carlos and 5 Mile Radius. So we're not saying that we're not doing anything more on that front. We're just really going to try to focus our attentions on any sort of unrestricted funds to supporting our local nonprofits.
Okay. Thanks again, Jessica. All right, next is item 4B. We're going to receive a presentation from the San Mateo County Economic Development Association, that's SAMCEDA, in their response to COVID-19. Item 4B, we're going to receive a presentation from the San Mateo.
Okay. Looks like we're having issues with sharing screen, so I'm going to turn this over to Don Cecil, who is with SAMCEDA, and he'll be presenting tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council. I am not Roseanne Faust. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I hope to be an adequate stand-in. So let me figure out how to share my screen here. Is that working, Crystal?
You do have co-host rights right now, so if you go to the bottom share screen area, are you seeing the option to?
Share screen, there we go. Bear with me here. My technical skills. Is that working?
Yes, that looks good.
Okay, thank you very much. We will make this quick and leave most time for questions. Just as a foundation, the San Mateo County Strong Fund was set up in a partnership between the County of San Mateo, SAMCEDA, and the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. The Board of Supervisors approved earlier this month an initial $3 million in funding for the fund. $1 million was for direct services to individuals and families in San Mateo County, delivered through an existing relationship with 8 core service agencies that have been partnering with the county for many years. The second phase is $1 million in support for those same nonprofit agencies plus 7 homeless shelters in order to help them meet increased demand and scale up on things like technology for remote client services. And then finally, we had the $1 million for small business grants. What we learned early in the process was due to IRS issues, the Community Foundation was not able to actually do direct grants to small businesses. So we pivoted fairly quickly and we ran with a relationship with the San Mateo Credit Union. They set up their own 501c3, the San Mateo Credit Union Community Fund. And so we are going to be distributing the $1 million from the board in small business grants through that fund. And then any monies that we continue to raise targeted for small business grants will go through that process as well. And just to level set everyone's expectations, $1 million, if each grant with a maximum of $10,000 only equals 100 grants. So in speaking to the great presentation that Jessica gave and partnering sort of in that with information, the Silicon Valley Community Foundation has 2 COVID-related emergency response funds. One is individuals and families in the 10-county region of the Bay Area. The other is a regional nonprofit emergency fund targeting nonprofits in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties. We created the Strong Fund because we wanted all funds that were raised by it to stay in San Mateo County. And we mirrored the individuals and families, nonprofits, and small business grants. We appreciate that the City of San Carlos was an early leader in partnering with the Strong Fund on small business grants and contributing your $112,000. We are having other cities follow your lead, which is fantastic. There are also a couple of cities who are self-implementing grant and loan programs. We applaud that because the need is great and we want to get the money out. Quickly, we all know that this new federal pandemic relief bill has been passed by Congress. The best thing about it was re-upping the $320 billion for the Paycheck Protection Program, and we hope that that process becomes easier for small businesses to actually participate and be awarded. It is very important for those in your community that are self-employed, whether they're an Uber driver or potentially a hairdresser, a real estate agent, or someone who's a personal trainer, and all folks in between who are either self-employed or sort of a 1099 employee. Tomorrow, the state of California will launch its very specific pandemic unemployment assistance portal. This is the portal that people have struggled to qualify for through the normal EDD portal. And so it will provide that pandemic unemployment assistance plus the additional $600 that the CARES Act will put on top of the weekly amount from the state of California. So I just post this here. I know there's a lot of people who have been desperate for this to start. The state is promising to process and provide funding within about 24 to 48 hours. So now we have the small business grant program through the San Mateo County Strong Fund. So that's $1 million to start with, about 100 grants, basic operations. We're distributing it. The initial $1 million that was approved by the county is being administered and allocated. It's Measure K funds, so we used a population-based allocation formula. So each city and or the unincorporated areas of San Mateo County will receive their portion of that $1 million based on population. As you have already led the way, we are happy to accept cities or other donors who want to sort of target that money either in a city or in a particular region. And there is no citizenship requirement for a small business owner to apply for this grant. They simply need to meet the eligibility criteria that we'll go through on the next slide. And the eligibility criteria: a for-profit company with at least 2 employees, a current business license if that jurisdiction issues a license, having an office space or a presence in San Mateo County, having no more than 10 full-time equivalent employees or less than 2.5 million in annual gross revenue, been opened at least a year, and able to demonstrate at least a 25% loss in gross revenue due to COVID-19. The application process went live today, and it was not without some bumps, but it happened and we got it launched. And I'm happy to report we had 2,530 individuals start the application process. 659 of those completed the application process. There are 1,871 unfinished applications in the queue. There will be outreach tonight to reconfirm to everyone who submitted that their application was received, and instructions will be given to the 1,871 individuals who have an unfinished application, instructions on how to return to the website, finish that application. If they had technical issues, say with submitting supporting documentation, they'll be instructed to go back to the website in the morning to finish that process. We tried to create a process that would stand the demand that we thought was going to be. We did that. We had 512 applications started within the first 22 minutes. So the demand was more than we even anticipated. And to put this into numbers, 2,530 applications would mean that after the board's $1 million is applied, and not even factoring in the money from the city of San Carlos, we need another 5.5 million just to meet that need and that demand. So it is pretty desperate out there, and we are going to work with every one of those people who started this process to help them finish this process. The review process will be that the underwriting team at the San Mateo Credit Union, who have been amazing, will review all the applications for eligibility. Eligible applications will be forwarded to the county for final review. Eligible applications will be funded in order of receipt. And that's based on a few different allocation models. So we know Measure K money is countywide. The money that you contributed, you want targeted to San Carlos businesses. We will build a queue of qualified applications greater than the money that we have to give out right now, because we have to raise more money. And then the grant dollars will be issued as expeditiously as possible by the credit union's community fund. And then finally, we have been doing aggressive outreach to the cities and the towns in San Mateo County. You're obviously on that far left column, joining the other cities that have pledged to date. And I'm pretty proud of the cities in San Mateo County. The cities in the pledges to date are over 1.4 million. We will be making presentations to Atherton and Woodside this week, and we've made presentations, or we plan to make presentations in Belmont, East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, Millbrae, Pacifica, and San Bruno. Our outreach program, we hope, was robust, and I think is reflected in the fact that we had over 2,500 people begin the application process today. We will continue to inform. Here's our plan, and it's consistent with Jessica's plan. It's consistent with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, with San Francisco, with Silicon Valley Strong. We are all going to go out there and raise as much money as we can to help as many people as we can. With respect to SAMCITA and the Small Business Grant Program, every $10,000 we can raise, we can hopefully save another small business and help them to last another month and hopefully make it to the other side of this when they can reopen and get on the path to economic recovery. So I will stop there and address any questions.
All right. Thank you, Don. Outstanding presentation. We're going to start with Adam. He's got a question for you, or two.
Don, thanks for the presentation. It's great. I appreciate it. Can you just clarify? I know you talked about the $1 million that is in the fund for the small businesses, and that's sort of, as I understood, it's sort of distributed by the formula for Measure K. And so the San Carlos pot is whatever that portion is plus the 112K or however that comes in there. So if other cities aren't making their own contributions on top of it, your intention is to keep that formula for Measure K the same, right? We're not. Does that make sense? I mean, initial 1 million is locked in. Whatever the number in San Carlos is going to stay that way.
So the $1 million in Measure K funding equates to about 4 grants for the city of San Carlos. Okay. So that's the Measure K allocated by population. It'll equal about 4 grants. And then your additional 112,000 will equal about 11 grants. And so then from there, if we find other donors who want to give specific to San Carlos, all that money will go to San Carlos businesses. If we found a magical $10 million angel donor out there somewhere who just wanted to give to the entire county and not break it up, then we would flip back to that Measure K allocation model, likely by population.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Appreciate it.
Sorry, Laura. Apologize.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. Thank you, Don, for the presentation. You did a fantastic job. So I appreciate your coming tonight and sharing with us all the great works that SAMCITA has been doing. A couple of questions for you. can you share a little bit, if you've had a view into, and just because apps went live today, probably not, what interest you're seeing from San Carlos businesses? In addition, can you speak to what are your strategies around raising additional funds for SMC Strong?
Sure. So unfortunately, the tech support team hadn't been able to break it down by city just yet. What I can assure you is, from the moment that someone entered their first email address in that first step in the application process, that application was time-stamped at that point. So we will be able to go back and see, of all 2,530 people who started the process, who was first, who was 2,530th, and then, be able to sort, for instance, by the city. So we don't have that just yet, but we know that that is information that cities will be interested in. So in the same way that I look at this broader need to raise $5.5 million, if, for instance, you knew that there were 20 applications that were qualified but not funded yet in San Carlos, it could afford you the same opportunity to go try and raise, another $200,000. The challenge is this isn't just an earthquake. It's not a tornado in Oklahoma or a hurricane in Florida, where you have a devastating natural disaster, but it's localized and the rest of the country comes to everyone's support. We are all in every state, county, and city in the eye of a hurricane. And we can't go help anyone else because we're too busy trying to help ourselves. And because the spirit of San Mateo County is one in which we all sort of do think of ourselves as one big community of 21 cities, towns in the county, that was sort of the reason behind the Strong Fund. We wanted to raise money here that was spent here. But we need a long and sustained fundraising effort. We've learned today that this is going to be another month and it will make the need that much bigger. And we're going to have to work probably 10 times as hard, because everyone that we thought would give us $1 million is being hit up by, 100 other places that they do business. And it will take tenacity. And it's okay that we haven't raised it all right now, because we will need to sustain this fund over time to help those businesses that we can help survive this.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for everything you're doing, Don. I know you're working tirelessly on this. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all.
Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Don. And no need to apologize for not being Roseanne. You did a great job.
Thank you.
A question I had as I was listening to you, obviously the need is potentially much larger than the amount of money that's available to disperse right now. Are the grants all like $10,000 grants, or are they variable depending on what's asked for or what the entity decides the applicant qualifies for, or what?
Sure. So they are not all a guaranteed $10,000. It is up to $10,000. And the underwriters, we're asking folks to the best of their ability to provide as much financial data, backup documents, bank statements, whatnot, over a 12-month period of time between March 2019 and maybe it's February 15th, 2020. Anyway, we're looking for 12 months of data. That will be averaged, and then 2 months of the average expenses is what the total grant will be. So if someone's average expenses are $3,000 per month, then their grant would be $6,000, not a guaranteed $10,000. So in that small way, we may be able to stretch this a little bit farther, but we really won't know until the underwriting team at the credit union gets in the applications and the data and begins to get a sense of what that average grant is. And
so now I thank you. That's very helpful. I have a better appreciation for why you were saying that the money that's available now, I mean, and it's not a criticism of what people are doing. It's just, it's not commensurate with the likely demand that there is.
Yeah.
And so what, I guess then, if we, to the extent we're not successful at raising enough money, it's essentially a first come, first served kind of thing.
Correct.
Okay.
At least our strategy, I mean, unfortunately, my fear and prediction has proven itself that we would have about enough money for the first 100 grants. And already, not even 12 hours after the application portal opened, we've got 659 submitted applications. Doesn't mean they'll all qualify, but we are going to be looking at several hundred qualified applicants that we have to go find money for. So they won't lose their place in line. They'll keep their place in line. And it serves as a rallying cry for us to go and try and raise that money so that whoever's the next in line for their grant, we can disperse that as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And one distinction I make, excuse me, I applaud the work that Jessica's doing and the Community Foundation, and loans are important. With this money, we made the conscious decision to go with a grant because we just didn't want one more thing for a small business owner to worry about in the form of, I'm going to have to pay this back in 6 months, or I've got to, think about some onerous document process. Not that that's the process at the Opportunity Fund. They do amazing work. But our goal is to get it in and get it out as quickly as we can.
Again, thank you very much for all of that. And thank you for all of the hard work that you folks are putting into it. It sounds like a very well run and organized program, in a crisis situation. And I just really applaud everything you're doing.
Thank you very much.
All right. And last but not least, Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Don, for joining us tonight. I know today must have been a very long day for you, and I appreciate you spending time with us. I have 3 quick questions.
Of course.
Number 1, how long is the portal going to be open and accepting applications? Number 2, do you have any details on kind of the distribution timeframe? Are we thinking weeks or a month? Just kind of to set expectations. And then number 3, will the cities be advised how many applicants in our town are left on the list and kind of what we're looking at monetarily? Thank you.
Sure. As of right now, we plan to open the portal again tomorrow. Certainly for people to go back in and finish the applications that they started. I'm not sure it will be open for brand new applications simply because we have over 2,000, but I'm not sure about that. We're discussing that in the morning. At some point we have to close it just because we want to process what we have, but we can get back to you on that through the city manager or the city clerk about what those details are in the morning. The time frame to get the money out is really as quickly as possible. So the underwriting teams are, as I understand it, already looking at the applications that have been submitted. And I think we say that we will get back to people within 7 days on a decision. And the goal is to get the money out. We're not talking months at all. I don't know that the check will get cut this week, but as quickly as possible by next week is my recollection of our goal. Really, it's, people needed this money on March 17th, and so we understand we need to get it out as quickly as we can. But I think certainly that's something that we, again, can keep folks either updated on when we have the county manager's call on Wednesday and sort of give you an update of where that stands. You are not the first city to request that list of who's left. It's both sort of who's been funded and who's left. So we understand that. The Board of Supervisors is also looking to see how that Measure K money was allocated. So it's on the to-do list. We haven't quite gotten to it yet, but we know that every city is going to want to know where this money went, especially in the instances where you've allocated specific dollars for small business grants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Don, I had a couple questions for you, but thanks to Mark, who stole one of my questions, I only got one. So I'm wondering about the manpower to process all these applications. How do you do that?
Well, I haven't actually been in the room, and I'm not even sure it is a room that it takes place. I can't say enough amazing things about the San Mateo Credit Union. I'm not sure that I had met any of these people before, and they stepped right up to partner with the county and do this because this is, they are the San Mateo Credit Union, and they have branches across the county. So they have an entire underwriting team that is normally working on small business loans and mortgage loans and refinance loans and all different types of loan products and other bank products that require people to fill out applications, submit verification documents. So they are putting that team of people who, for a living, determine eligibility for financial disbursements and throwing them at this to make sure it gets done accurately, fairly, that we are conscious of being on the lookout for fraud because these are public dollars, and expeditiously as possible, while at the same time being as accurate as possible.
So these are experienced, competent people who pretty much follow the same procedures they would for, say, a regular loan, except that in this case it's a grant?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
These are banking and financial professionals who, have been tapped to do the review.
Okay. Thank you. Adam had another question.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mayor. And Don, thanks. I guess just Sarah's question kind of sparked just one quick follow-up for me. Because you said you might end up closing the process to new grants or new applicants maybe as early as tomorrow. I'm just anticipating if things move forward, if you were to get a personal grant for Belmont for something, or Foster City gave a significant amount of money, would you open it up then for certain towns if there's more funding left by town? Because I don't know what the geographic distribution might be of the applications you have so far.
So with about 2,500 applications that were started, there's a level of confidence that there'll be enough that get approved and that we don't have funding for right now to account for money that comes in the future. What I'll say is I hope we find ourselves in a position where we have to open this up again because we have money to give, either because we've exhausted what's in front of us or there's not enough in a particular location and we have to go and generate more. So that's the best answer I can give you, Adam. I hope we were faced with that problem.
No, and I know that might not be something right now because things have to play out a little bit and see how long this lasts and everything else. Yeah. So, but I appreciate that answer, Don, and I think thanks again for all the work you guys are doing. It's been fantastic, and I wish you all the best of luck in getting this thing processed and through.
All right, thank you, Adam, and thank you again, Don. What an amazing program yours is, along with the Community Foundation. It's nice to see so many different organizations stepping up to help people in need.
Absolutely. Thank you all very much.
All right. Thank you. We're going to move on to item 4C, which is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing May 3rd through the 9th of this year as Public Service Week. We did craft a proclamation, and I just want to read part of it because it's very important that we recognize the many public servants, including military personnel, police officers, firefighters, healthcare professionals, who risk their lives every day in service to people in our communities who are in need. They have an institutional knowledge, experience, and continuity that supports the long-term sustainability of our community assets and organizational history. And day in and day out, public servants provide the diverse services demanded by the American people of their government with efficiency and integrity. So we are very proud as a city to recognize our partners in the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department, the River City Fire Department, who work tirelessly every day to provide high quality services and facilities to our residents in a sustainable and transparent and responsive and friendly manner. Without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly has new leaders and elected officials. And we rely on these people, our staff members, our public safety officers, every day. And I don't think a simple proclamation can even come close to expressing how grateful we are for that. Along those lines, I got some correspondence in the last week or so from a local resident who wanted to recognize one of the members of our community. And this woman's name is Cheryl Greenspan. She is a retiring nurse, and she and her husband, who is a pediatrician, are retiring and moving to Arizona. And the reason that Cheryl is so special is that it was pointed out to us that not only being a longtime resident of San Carlos, but she single-handedly mobilized sewing enthusiasts throughout San Mateo County and made over 2,000 face masks during the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, this is still going on, and I'm sure that there will be more volunteers and compatriots of hers who will take over that chore. She also orchestrated the delivery of these critical PPE supplies to all hospitals, many San Mateo County fire and police departments, local grocery stores, and restaurants. As a registered nurse, Cheryl keeps the safety of our first responders in the forefront, yet always recognizes the importance of remembering and thanking volunteers for these efforts. Throughout coordinating the production of the PPEs, she made sure to share with the community volunteers that many notes of thanks and pictures of smiling recipients of these masks, encouraging them to keep sewing these critical supplies. She is an exemplary example of our community service and volunteerism spirit, and we are so proud to be able to make this proclamation. I do want to add that yesterday, a bunch of her friends and I guess her husband's patients, and I don't know how many people, at least 100 to maybe 150 cars gathered up on Crestview and drove by her home to wish her well. It was really a sight to behold, and she was very surprised. I guess her family kept it from her for a while, but she's very grateful, and we were I was very happy to be an observer in the whole process. Before we move on, Crystal, I think we had a short video to show that was put together by a Carlmont High School student for the Scotland Scoop. Crystal, I think we had a short video to show that was put together by a Carlmont High School student.
We do have the video, but unfortunately there's technical issues there. I can forward it to you to make you co-host, but it doesn't appear, I don't appear to have the ability to share anything without those issues.
Can you just play it for us?
You won't be able to view it.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm not
unless it's shared by me?
Correct, unless I can have someone who's in the video.
Through the chair,
yes.
Crystal, if it's not that big a video, can you put it someplace where one of us, like if I could download it, then I can play it for everybody?
Yes. Give me just 1 minute. Let me go ahead and forward that link over to you.
While we're waiting, I had asked Cheryl if she could to just make if she wanted to call in and make any comments, and I don't know if she did. Cheryl or Cheryl, Crystal, are you able to see whether or not she called in?
Yeah, I do not see her on as a participant, so doesn't look like she has been able to. Mark, you do have co-host rights, and the email with the link has been forwarded to you.
Okay, let's see, it has not yet arrived. Hang on a second. Look. I am sorry to say, Crystal, that I'm in my email system and it's still not, I keep refreshing it and it's not there. But hang on a second, let me check, let's see if it ended up in the junk folder. No, it doesn't appear to be there either.
Sarah, this link came from you, so if I can make you co-host, if you don't mind, to share that.
So Crystal, what do I push? Share screen?
Yes, so share screen, and then it will open up a browser and you can select which document to share.
Did that work?
There you go. You got it.
Okay, now I'm going to press play.
It looks like your video, the audio is off. So if you stop video or stop share and do that again, there's a button where you can click on the bottom of the share screen that says turn on audio.
Oh my gosh. Is that working? No. Sorry,
yeah.
Crystal.
No worries. Technical issues here.
I'm not sure.
Mark, in the meantime, did that email come through to you?
I was just looking, it's not in my in basket. Hang on a second. Let me try the junk folder again. I have all sorts of interesting junk emails, but not that one. This is very strange. I don't.
Sorry, maybe it's not worth it.
Looks like Tara.
Well, perhaps we try next meeting.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
I think it'd be fun to see.
We made a gallant effort, but our thanks again to Cheryl and from everyone on the council. If you're watching, we wish you safe travels and a great new life in Arizona. Okay, we're going to move on now to item 5, which is public comment. Any persons wishing to address the city council at this time on issues, on items that are not on the agenda. They are received now by telephone, and there is a phone number that you can call, and I'm not seeing it on the screen, so I will just tell you what it is. It's 669-900-9128. That's 669-900-9128 or 253-215-8782. Crystal, do we have any callers for public comment in the queue at this time?
We do not. I want to also mention that the meeting ID that public comments callers are going to have to enter is 452-388-965. So again, that meeting ID number is 452-388-965, and we'll give everyone a minute here to call in.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
While we're waiting, thank you. Crystal, could you unco-host me because I can't apparently raise my hand if I'm co-host.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, I do have somebody calling in. Bring them up. Caller number ending in 138. Thank you for calling into the City Council meeting. Please lower the volume of the meeting behind you before you proceed with your public comment. You will have approximately 2 minutes to address the council. And if you'd like, please state your name prior to providing your public comment. Okay, thank you. Go ahead and proceed. Caller ending in 138, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
You can proceed with your comments.
Okay. I'd like to speak on the subject of the initiative announced by Governor Newsom, the restaurant deliver. So basically, it's a program that bridge. Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so basically, it's bridging the gap between people in need, in particular elderly and people with high health risk, and then connecting local restaurants and supplying meals to them. I'm the owner of Number 5 Kitchen located in San Carlos downtown, and we have connection with local vendors, local farms in San Mateo County, and we have capacity in our restaurant kitchen to be able to provide meals for these people in need. And we need to, ask your help to get the contact from FEMA or the state level, county level, to the city level to connect the funds that's going to be allocated for these meals, for us to, start producing meals for these people. So I just like to put that on the table and, ask for your feedback. Thank you.
Okay. Crystal, did we have any other callers?
No other callers right now.
All right.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mark.
I'm wondering if we should refer the caller to perhaps have staff reach out to them to see if they can provide him with the assistance he's asking for.
That wouldn't be a bad idea.
Yeah, I would ask the caller if rather than have them share their contact information at a public meeting, if you could email our assistant city manager, whose name is Tara Peterson. You can find her contact information on the city website. Again, she's our assistant city manager. Her name is Tara Peterson. Email her your contact information, and we'll have somebody from city staff get back to you and see if we can't get you in contact with the programs you're looking for.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And no other calls, Crystal?
No other callers.
Okay. I just want to add before we move on that while we were talking, I got an email from Cheryl and said she was sorry she missed the call tonight. She got involved in helping a family that may be losing their home with all that's going on, and they're trying to get them masks and PPEs. And she said the time just flew by. So this woman really is focused on her mission. So we're all grateful. Okay, we're going to move on now to item 6, which is council communications and announcements. These are basically brief items from members of the council regarding upcoming events in the community and correspondence that they have received. I'm going to start with Adam.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. I just had a quick item I just want to talk about that we were able to work out. I want to thank Stephen Machida for all his work working with Recology, that we're able to do the bulky item collection again in San Carlos. We're the first city to be able to do that after that was stopped. So it's going to be a drop-off instead of a collection, but our residents can call into Recology and get that scheduled and work with our Public Works Department to get it dropped off at the Corp Yard. So as people have trash and they're doing their cleanup and cardboard, there's an opportunity to get that taken care of in a timely manner. They did, and they are looking at, well, they mentioned that there are some at Recology, and they have had a furlough a few drivers, but they're now looking to maybe have those drivers take over and help work at Second Harvest in the short term as drivers, since they need more commercial licensed drivers, an opportunity to kind of help in multiple places to keep those drivers busy, but also help out Second Harvest.
Okay, Laura.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. I appreciate that. So I've spoken to many residents this past weekend, and I'm sensing and hearing directly that the continuation of the shelter in place is wearing on people, and people are experiencing a lot of different emotions: stress, sadness, feeling disconnected, all the while working hard to find the silver lining. And I know many of us are mourning the loss of loved ones, as well as praying and wishing good thoughts for those people who are fighting for their lives. The county, as everybody knows, did issue today an extended shelter in place order with more details that are forthcoming. I am on the part of the team that is contributing to the San Mateo County long range plan that is focused on what does recovery and emergence from the shelter in place look like over 30, 60, 90 days and longer. There's not a lot of detail right now, but they are working on 7 different work streams for which they've identified specific goals and objectives, for which I'm also expecting to get an update on next week to learn more. Those focus areas are preparing for a secondary disaster, education and childcare services, triggers for lifting a shelter in place, delivering resources to a shelter in place population, economic recovery and financial impact planning, preparing for a second wave, planning for underserved populations. So I know that these times are very difficult. I think it's important that we all continue to stay engaged, reach out, ask questions, ask for help if you need it. We've heard from a couple of organizations tonight that are doing much good work to help sustain our community. And I know that we'll be talking more about some of those programs later on this evening. And as soon as we have updates from more specific plans from the county, I'm sure that city staff will be sharing them with you in more robust detail, but just wanted to give you an up-to-date perspective on that. Thank you.
Sorry, Sarah, you're next. I have to remember to keep unmuting myself.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to quickly note that I participated. I'm a board member for commute.org, and we had a board meeting recently. And commute.org is now looking at best practices from employers during this time to figure out how to help employees continue teleworking once we emerge out of shelter in place. John Ford, the executive director, had a great op-ed in the San Mateo Daily Journal recently. Commute.org has a terrific resource page on teleworking that employers can use as uses guidelines to implement a formal policy going forward. And they also have this cute little tips for planning your teleworking day for many of us who are now teleworking. So just some interesting resources there. Commute.org is the website. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick things. I'm not sure if I think we all received these emails that I'm going to touch on briefly. I would be interested, and maybe we talk about this in an agenda setting, or maybe we just direct, if people are interested, we just direct staff to work with the appropriate commission at this point. I'd be interested in seeing whether or not there's a way that we could modify or utilize the neighborhood block party regulations that we have to allow neighborhoods to seek permission to close off their streets for either multiple days or for on a regularly scheduled basis, to allow people to, particularly kids, to bike ride on the street, sort of turn the street into a bike area. So the idea basically would be to see if we could modify or extrapolate off of the block party regulations that we already have in place and the insurance that we provide to be able to do that. So that's one thing I want to kick out there, see if people are interested in. The other is, I think we all also got this email. I thought it was an interesting idea to consider temporarily turning the north 3 blocks of Laurel Street into a pedestrian mall, which obviously we could not normally do because that would sacrifice a significant chunk of our parking capacity downtown. But as I'm sure you all have noticed, I see this a lot because I walk downtown fairly frequently. There's not a lot of traffic down there, and there's not a lot of cars using the parking spaces to begin with. That might be something that would make it a little bit more attractive for people to be going downtown to get takeout and whatnot. That too is an idea that was sent to us, I think, by Greg St. Clair, that I thought I would kick around and see if anybody was interested in pursuing it. And I have one other idea that I'll hold off on until we talk about agenda setting at the end of the meeting, because it's not something that came in from third parties.
Okay, thank you, Mark. You brought up a couple things, and we should probably gauge some interest from council members along these lines. The first one is this interesting idea of modifying block party regulations. That would need to be obviously something we'd have to put on a future agenda. Is there some interest in having that discussion? Everybody's muted, so if you are interested, you'll need to unmute yourselves.
Can I, I'm just trying to understand, are we doing agenda setting now, or I thought this was council communication?
Well, we're just talking about putting it on the agenda. I just want to gauge the interest on whether or not we put it as an agenda setting item. That's all.
Mayor, can I make a suggestion? I'm wondering, because there's been several proposals forwarded this evening from Councilmember Olbert. I'm wondering if we capture those and take them at the end, just to give folks time to think about it and collect their questions, because I think they're provocative.
Sure, take them at the end of the evening under additional council communication.
Yes, we have a specific agenda item for agenda setting towards the end of the meeting that Councilmember Olbert referenced earlier. So maybe we can talk about the 3 things he suggested at that point.
Actually, so far it was 2. And just to be clear, the only reason I was bringing them up now is there was a third one that I will bring up later. I'm happy to talk about these later. These were ones that I thought we all had gotten through emails, and that was part of this section as well, as comments that we've gotten in from the community. That's why I brought them up here.
Okay, so maybe we'll chat about these at the last part of the meeting.
Works for me.
Good with that?
Sure, that's great. Yeah, or even at agenda setting at that time is fine too. Either one. Either one.
All right. Well, we're getting close to that. So, okay. Did anybody have any other comments that they forgot to make or want to make? Okay. We're on to item 7, which is our consent calendar. I will need a general motion. Is there any item that anybody wants to pull off of the agenda? All right. Not hearing any, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
All right. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Okay. Crystal?
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parma Lohan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor Collins?
Yes. Okay. Next is agenda setting, which we were just talking about. So the one item that's on here already is consideration of agendizing an item to adopt a resolution condemning discrimination and uniting against racism and xenophobia. I think, Mark, that was your suggestion. Would you like to give us some background on that or some detail?
Sure. I can't claim credit for this because I think it was initially sparked by something I think we all got a few weeks ago from Millbrae,
Wayne
Lee in Millbrae. And there's been some work that the Asian American Pacific Islander group has done as well, which I think was also attached here. You know, what I submitted is actually a written out agenda. That's simply because I got started writing notes down and that's what I ended up producing. I think in terms of tonight's agenda setting action, what this really boils down to is not necessarily whether, you know, we're not looking to approve something. We're looking to see whether or not the council wants to give staff direction to bring back a resolution of some form at a future meeting on this subject and to provide guidance to staff on what it ought to contain. I'm happy to answer any questions about why I wrote what I wrote the way I did. But, you know, I think otherwise it sort of speaks for itself. And the important thing is, does the council want to bring that kind of thing back and what elements do you want staff to include in it?
Reaction, comments?
Sure, I'm happy to support that. I mean, we've, as Mark pointed, a little bit or have staff put some feedback in from my perspective, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Oh, I think we lost your connection there. At least I did there for a second.
Am I back?
Yes, you are.
I said, sure, I'm happy to support having staff come up with a sort of resolution, and we're a welcoming city, and I think it's a good opportunity to show it.
Okay. Laura?
Yes, I'm in favor of it. Recommend that perhaps staff look at what the county put in place and make sure that we have is reflective of our values and mission. So I'm appreciative of the suggestion.
Okay. Sarah?
I agree. I echo both comments.
Okay, thank you. And I also agree. I think I would hope that staff would take a look at any other resolutions any other city has put together, plus the county, and that might give us a good idea of what we might want to use in ours.
We'll have that prepared for you for your next agenda.
Right. Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Mayor, you forgot to ask me what I thought about the idea. No, it's fine. I'm just trying to inject a little bit of levity in the
I'm going to take a giant leap of faith here and assume that you're in favor of it. Okay. We are now on to reports to council. This is to receive an update on the coronavirus plans affecting San Carlos. Is this you, Jeff?
Yes, it is. I was just under the impression you were going to talk about some other agenda setting items, but you're going to do that later?
Well, I think we agreed that we were going to do it at the end.
Okay, very good.
There were several things people wanted to mull over.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can get the presentation up here.
Tara, you should have access as co-host right now.
Thanks, Tara. Let's get started. Looks like it's in editing mode as opposed to presentation mode. There you go. Okay, thank you, council members. Would like to give you an update on the information we've received from the state, federal, county government on their responses to COVID-19, as well as some of the issues and things the city's been working on since our last council meeting. The next slide. Thank you. San Mateo County health orders have continued to be modified. There are, let me see if I can close this window. Thank you. On April 15th, more restrictions on assisted living facilities, which began to experience some significant issues with outbreaks of COVID-19. April 16th, the county health directed law enforcement not to disperse the homeless from encampments as the virus has spread rapidly through the homeless community. We didn't want to see those homeless folks sort of dispersed and sent out to a lot of different communities and continue to rapidly spread the virus. April 22nd, I think as we all know, face coverings now became required when around others out in public places. And from what I've seen, that seems to have been well dispersed information. A lot of people wearing your face coverings. I know it's not necessarily the funnest thing, but I'd really encourage everybody to go ahead and do that. If you're not, continue doing it. If you are, April 27th, announced earlier today that the shelter-in-place order is going to be extended through May. I talked with the county earlier today. They are expecting to relax some restrictions that they consider to be low risk, such as opening parks and other things, that they'll be looking at issuing details, hopefully by Wednesday or the end of the week, certainly. The San Mateo County Strong Fund, we heard a bit about earlier today, so I won't go through this information in great detail because I think we got a great presentation earlier. But I would like to point out that we have reached out to the San Carlos business community to let them know about the program, contacting 1,500 local businesses. Additionally, we've reached out with the Strong Fund Child Center Grant Program to 15 child care centers in San Carlos to let them know about the information that they'd need to access that funding. And as you can see in the presentation here, additional information is available on the city's website. So we'd encourage folks who feel like they may be able to benefit from those programs to take a look at this information and put in their applications. The governor established the following criteria that must be considered before the COVID-19 restrictions are reduced in California: the ability to monitor and protect our communities through testing, contact tracing, isolation, and supporting those who are positive or exposed is critical. The ability to prevent infection in people who are at risk for more severe COVID-19. The ability of the hospitals and healthcare systems to handle surges, the ability to develop therapeutics to meet the demand, the ability for businesses, schools, and childcare facilities to support physical distancing, and the ability to determine when to reinstitute certain measures as the stay-at-home orders if necessary. We are seeing in some countries who had early success, South Korea, Japan, who sort of came out from their shelter-in-place orders earlier than the rest of us, having started them earlier and been more aggressive in the beginning and had great success, now seeing a real resurgence of the virus in those countries and having to retrace their steps to a certain degree in terms of their shelter-in-place orders. I talked with the county earlier today about this, and understand that the county still had issues in receiving PPE. They have a large order being placed where it's being shipped from overseas and continues to be delayed. They're hoping to have it sometime in May. They think that'll be a critical next step in being able to start changing orders. They're also working diligently with the other counties in the states in terms of the contact tracing protocols, so that they can work back in terms of who's had contact with folks who have contracted the virus as a major sort of next step in moving us forward here. And then the testing kits and protocols continue to be in shortage and in great demand throughout the country. So that's been another weakness. April 14th, California joined with Oregon and Washington on a shared vision for reopening economies and to develop the process for opening using science and facts to guide thinking and share best practices. We're hearing daily from the governor. We're participating in those, or not participating, but monitoring those press conferences so that we have all the latest up-to-date information for our staff and for our community. We have not heard from the state about any decisions yet about the use of the Fairfield Inn, so it remains empty of any patients. The state also is allowing essential surgeries to go forward, and Nevada and Colorado joined the Western states earlier today for working on plans for reopening. Our community of San Carlos status, thus far we've received 195 volunteers. We heard a higher number reported from the foundation, so we'll have to do a little better job of coordinating that information with them, so we're getting the latest and greatest. Thus far, we've had 59 folks ask for help through the city. 57 of those requests have been completed, 2 are ongoing. And they fall into the following categories in terms of help getting groceries and medication, help with paying bills such as rent, and help using technology to accomplish the tasks that they need to do if they don't have adequate access to technology or are struggling with using it. We got a great presentation earlier from the Community Foundation of San Carlos. So again, this is sort of a reiteration of the good work they're doing and the very generous donations which they've received. The only thing I would add, in addition to the data you've already received tonight, is we have been working with the foundation on their fundraising program, and we are going to have an In Focus newsletter coming out to the community, sharing that information and other philanthropic information, where to go, how to donate, how to go to get funding. If you feel like you would qualify, those types of things should be at the printer now and going out to the community shortly. Our community members should follow the city on social media if you're not already. We're really encouraging you to follow us on Nextdoor, Facebook, and Twitter, and visit our website listed here, or call the county hotline at 211 for information and updates. The city hotline at 802-4347 if help is needed, if you need access to food or medication or those kinds of things, and you're having trouble meeting those needs, if you call that number, help will be given. The Samaritan House is holding its annual fundraiser to fight poverty virtually. The main event is Thursday, April 30th, this Thursday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. And you can visit their website at www.samaritanhousesanmateo.org to participate. The City Emergency Operations Center, the EOC, continues to operate virtually. We're ensuring that we're keeping apprised of all the new information coming from the state and county and federal government through our access to those emergency service providers in their EOCs. and we're working in terms of supporting our local nonprofits in the community's efforts to support those nonprofits, and trying to remain flexible and open to responding to the changing needs of the community as this situation continues to evolve and unfold in San Carlos. We're working in terms of acquiring personal protective equipment for our employees and our first responders, as well as our public works personnel, so that they can go about the course of their duties, which often take them out into the community and sometimes onto people's private property for service calls. We're having sneeze barriers constructed for city counters in anticipation of that City Hall will be reopening at some point in the future. We've, as Councilmember Rack mentioned earlier, we've implemented a citywide bulky item collection program, while Recology's curbside bulky item program is suspended. This will include cardboard and large items. So if you call the city and go to our website and look for that information, make an appointment, you'll be able to come down and drop off your large items if they're building up, like at my house. Citations are being issued for various health order violations when warnings are unheeded. We've really just had a handful of citations issued in the community. For the overwhelming majority of San Carlos residents, we've had a lot of cooperation and compassion and understanding in terms of our attempts to ensure that health orders are being followed properly in our community. We're working with the nonprofits that serve San Carlos to expand grocery distribution, providing reassurance calls for our ACC participants each week. Messages went out directly to businesses to help inform them of available resources, and we'll continue to do that in the future as additional resources come online or existing ones are modified. The Youth Advisory Council is coordinating a diaper drive this week and next week. We're working with the Community Foundation to host a blood drive June 6th at the Youth Center. And we're in coordination providing information to all our assisted living facilities in town to try to ensure that they're getting the information and access to information that they need to serve their very vulnerable population. The San Carlos Avenue Pedestrian Improvement Project continues, defined as an essential service. Several housing projects are continuing as they include at least 10% affordable units, which is deemed an essential service under the health order. There's a full listing on the city's website of any projects that are currently allowed to be operating. I know that there's a couple of commercial projects on the east side who are still operating, I believe, pending a determination from the county on whether they're exempted under the existing health order. And those are the biotechs that are listed there. Our public outreach status, we continue to update the city's website and social media daily. We've been working on a series of newsletters, almost starting one as soon as we complete the last, to make sure that we're getting email out, or rather information out to the community about all these new programs that are starting and how they can access those programs or how they can help support those programs if they're fortunate enough to be in the position to do that. We're overseeing the city hotline. We no longer have that staffed in real time by an individual, but we're monitoring the mailbox and getting back to people as soon as we receive those messages. We're working with the foundation on the Neighbor to Neighbor program and working to get signs and banners up throughout the community to inform residents about rules, restrictions, and other philanthropic opportunities related to the COVID-19 response. New city financial support. At our last meeting, the city council gave $112,000 both to the Samaritan House to help tenants pay rent, as well as San Mateo County Strong to help San Carlos businesses. The application period, obviously, we heard earlier for the San Mateo County Strong Business Program was earlier today. Applications will be available very soon in the Samaritan House process, and we're working with them, and we'll make sure that that information gets provided and put out into the community about the program so that folks in San Carlos can try to gain access to that. And then we gave $20,000 late last week to One Life Counseling as sort of an emergency stopgap to help that program that saw their program just explode in terms of volume. They unfortunately had to turn folks away a week and a half or so ago from that program. And then there's an item later on your agenda for council to consider giving more to that program in support of their effort to keep the community needs met, primarily around food and those type of critical necessities. That concludes my report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Crystal, do we have anybody who wanted to make any public comment on this item?
No, we haven't. We're opening it up now to the public. So if you have a public comment that you'd like to provide, please call 301-715-8592. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number 452-388-965. And once you connect, you'll be on mute and queued up in the waiting room.
Shall we give this about 30 seconds or so?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking at the real-time screen, so it looks like it's up.
Okay.
You see anybody calling in?
No, I don't.
All right. Okay. All right. At this point, we're going to move on to. I apologize. Let me back up a second. I almost forgot that we may have some questions from our council members. And Mark, you're the first name I see, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. Thank you, Jeff. Great update. Glad everybody's hanging in there. In fact, I wouldn't mind sort of a couple of questions there. I wouldn't mind if you just gave us a little bit of perspective on how staff is holding up, given all the stress that people are under. The other questions I had to do with, one is the trajectory of having to use law enforcement to follow up on folks who are not complying with the various regulations. I'm interested basically in, is it just bumping along at a low level? Is it going down or is it going up? Because, if it was going up, that'd be some source of concern. And then the last question specifically has to do with, I'm still a little bit confused about real estate transactions. As Barbara and I are out walking around getting exercise, I see an awful lot of open house signs and, open house like today, tomorrow, this weekend, whatever. And I'm having a hard time imagining that those are all sort of necessary transactions. I'd just be interested in your perspective on that as well.
Well, thank you for the questions. I think our staff is doing as well as possible under this set of circumstances. Obviously, we're all trying to be very flexible with one another and understanding in terms of this is all very new way of operating for us and communicating for us. And it's not necessarily the most efficient model at times, but we're really continuing to work together as a team. We've got, as you know, very, very experienced, very good staff here in San Carlos. We're very lucky with the folks that we've got working here. And, they're really focused on trying to make a difference for the community right now and helping one another in that mission. So I appreciate you asking about that. In terms of the police interactions and enforcement activities, I would say the comment that you made, bumping along, seems to be right. One day there's, it seems like we're getting a whole bunch of calls about gardeners or, somebody had a party the night before, or, whatever they're reporting in terms of activities that they believe are prohibited under the order. And then the next day we have almost nothing. I don't believe, having talked to the chief about this late last week, that we've seen any significant uptick in those activities. Seems to fall within the same sort of parameters over the course of a week if you look at it. And then in terms of the real estate one, and I don't know if Greg wants to weigh in here, he might have more to add than I do. My understanding was that was not a exempted activity, so I would say that those types of things would not be allowed. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion amongst the real estate agent community about that, but I haven't heard if there's been any changes in terms of how that's being viewed from the health order officials. Greg, you?
Yeah, I can add something to that. Open houses are not allowed under the order, but real estate brokers and agents can have appointments where they show a property. So maybe their signage hasn't caught up with what they're doing, but all they can do is have an appointment, show a property, and have only, there's limitations on the number of people that can be there. The occupants of the house can't be there. So it's a very orchestrated order, but houses can be shown either virtually or with in a very restricted appointment regime.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, Laura.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. Thank you for the report, Jeff. Very impressive. Lots of work and a very thoughtful approach. Question for you. Just given the statistics that we heard earlier with respect to the number of applications that came into San Mateo County Strong this week, as well as the demand for food that was shared with us earlier by Jessica from Community Foundation, do we have a collective understanding of kind of the magnitude of the economic impact on families in terms of, people who are really struggling financially to get access to food and that type of thing? The reports I've heard from Second Harvest on the county calls are that the demand is so high they really can't keep track of it, but it's just something that's really not nagging at me and trying to understand that, I know we put money behind these efforts, but how do we kind of stay ahead of it, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have any sense of that you could share with us?
We don't have a lot of data at this point, and I think, that'll be something, sort of going forward as we get past all this and look at how we might improve things if we ever find ourselves in this situation again. That would be good to help inform us in making those critical types of decisions. So in lieu of that data, what we've tried to do is have a lot of outreach to the folks running those programs, have a lot of dialogue with them to understand the need in real time, so that when something happens, like with the One Life program, we can react to it quickly, where we don't exactly have a lot of great data to support it, but we know what actually happened with the program that particular week, and we'll have to take a look at it that way. But that's definitely been something for us that at times has been frustrating, because our line of work is typically so data driven and data centric that we're very much sort of performing without the net on this one.
Yeah, well, it's a testament to your strong relationships with our community partners that you're able to respond so quickly. So I find that reassuring.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't see anybody else who had questions on this. So with that, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. I'm going to step away for just a minute.
I'm sorry?
I was just saying, I'm just going to step away for just a minute.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. Very much appreciated. Okay, we're going to move on to item 10. This is a public hearing, consideration of introducing an ordinance adding chapter 15.60, construction time limits to title 15 of the San Carlos Municipal Code for construction time limits and penalties. Chris, are you going to be making that presentation? Chris Valley?
It's going to be me, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Chris will be available for with any kind of questions.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Greg.
I could see it there, so let's see if I can get it to work here. How do I? I've got like a, there it is, okay. So view options.
Okay, Greg, you should have control now.
Okay. Okay, so construction time limits ordinance. Not seeing any kind of a.
Greg, I'll help you proceed.
Thank you. This comes before the council after the council and the planning commission heard public concern about how long it takes projects to be completed. Right now, there's no ordinance in the city that addresses the issue of when projects need to be completed. The only thing that is required under the building code is that some substantial measurable progress be made and an inspection be performed at least once every 180 days. Next slide. Almost all minor home remodels are completed reasonably quickly within a year. Most major home renovations, which have a second story or some larger level of work, are completed within 18 months. Some projects greatly exceed the average, and some have open permits for over 5 years in both the residential and commercial realms. So the Planning Commission identified several problems associated with long-term construction projects. There's parking impacts in the neighborhood with the different trades and construction vehicles that service and work at the project. Noise in the neighborhood, traffic interruptions where there's traffic controls or partial street blockages while materials are delivered. And then damage to city infrastructure such as sidewalks and roadways. So the solution that the Planning Commission and staff are recommending is a graded approach to different types of projects and creating different time limitations based upon the stated valuation of construction. So projects under 200,000 would not be subject to the time limit because we have not really experienced the types of problems, and the vast majority of those are completed within 12 months. So the 18-month is for projects between 200,000 and $1 million, which are probably some of the typical residential remodels. 24 months, 30-month and 36-month thresholds are based on the dollar amount of the projects. I might add that as you can see on the slide, that our ordinance, so we looked at several other ordinances in the Bay Area that address this issue. And then when there's a landscaping component to the project, there's an additional 90 days to complete that portion if that is included in the Planning Commission's conditions or plans that they approved. phasing of projects is allowed under this. We recognize that there's that sometimes a project is of such a large size, or there might be a unique configuration of the property that the applicant proposes to commence their construction in phases. There's a couple of examples of that in town. That the Transit Village was actually a different building permit was issued for each building, so that technically would have been a phased project. And the Palo Alto Medical Foundation project actually has a approved portion of it that still has not been built all these years later, and that's a hospital. So theoretically, that would have been considered a phased project. It gives each separate phase a different dollar amount threshold and a different timeline to complete. And then a phase is considered complete when the certificate of occupancy or temporary certificate of occupancy is issued for the project. We have extensions that are allowed. There's two extensions that are allowed as a matter of right, but there's an extension fee that must be paid that's based, again, on the value of the project. So for example, on the first extension, if we had a $500,000 project, that would be, if my math is correct, $2,500 for that. And then you could see that it'd be $5,000 for the second extension. So this allows some, excuse me, and then there's another element that is allowed for extension fees to be waived where the need for the extension is beyond the owner's control. That's an important addition that we made to the ordinance. Penalties kick in when all the extensions have been exhausted and the project is still not completed. So there's a 30-day grace period where there's no penalty. And then the penalties gradually increase, again, based upon the value of the project. So on a $500,000, that hypothetical $500,000 project, when the penalties kick in, it would be $500 per day penalty. And then it would go to $750 and then ultimately $1,000 per day. But again, if it's a larger project, those penalties would be much proportionately larger. So appeals and denials of extensions or imposition of penalties can be appealed. There's an appeals board in the ordinance that would consider such appeals. We're trying to not use a lot of time of staff on these, other than give the applicants or the homeowners the ability to explain why they couldn't complete their project in a timely manner, or why the penalties might be unfair in their particular circumstance. And the Planning Commission reviewed this at 2 meetings. At the first meeting, the subject was introduced to them. It was not a typical situation where the Planning Commission is required to review this, because this resides in Title 15, not in the zoning ordinance. But the City Council thought it was important to have the Planning Commission look at it. And so they came up with some different ranges and different ideas in the ordinance. And one of the changes that staff made was that appeal process. But basically what you're seeing is what the Planning Commission considered and recommended. And with that is the end of my presentation, and I can answer any questions you might have about the proposed ordinance.
Greg, I think before we take any questions, I want to ask Crystal, do you see anybody who has called in for a public comment?
I do not, but I've gone ahead and displayed the screen so that anybody watching from home, if you'd like to make a public comment, please do so. Please call in right now at 301-715-8592. Meeting ID number is 452-388-965. We'll go ahead and give you a minute to call in.
Okay, yes, well, maybe we should get...
Mr. Mayor, while we're waiting, I forgot to mention something in my presentation that this ordinance will affect current projects that are underway and not completed, but the timelines will run from the adoption and, from the effective date of this ordinance, which will be 30 days from the adoption.
Okay.
So in about 45 days, it will become effective.
All right. Maybe we should allow a little bit more time because this is a public hearing and it's an item I think that the public has expressed a fair amount of interest in. Crystal, I'm looking at the actual feed on TV and there is a black box that appears there.
Yeah, that is my control box, so I can see if somebody's calling in.
Okay.
Trying to minimize it here. There you go.
Do you see anybody calling in?
Not just yet.
Okay. All right. Well, let's give it maybe another half a minute or so. Hopefully we have someone who's watching tonight. I do know that one person was watching. He told me I needed to smile more. So.
It looks like we do have somebody who's joined us. Stephen, can you hear me okay? I see a public comment. Her name's Stephen. Hello, Stephen, can you hear us? If you can hear us, please dial 301-715-8592. Meeting ID is 452-388-965. I'm going to go ahead and remove you here. And if you can go ahead and try calling in at that number with that meeting ID, we can admit you in at that time.
Crystal, do you see an attempt?
I'm not seeing the caller call back in.
All right. I saw him briefly appear on the participants and then his name went away.
Right. It looked like I had unmuted him, but for whatever reason, he was not able to speak.
Why don't we do this while we're waiting? People have the public comment number on the screen and they can certainly call and we welcome their calls. Mm-hmm. But why don't we take a couple questions from council members while we're waiting, and then we can always come back to that. Adam, you had a question?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Collins. I had a couple questions. I'll try to be quick. Greg, thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it. First, on the dollar amount, how does that get determined? How do we determine what the dollar amount value of that project is?
I think that might be a question for Chris Valley because he does that every day.
Okay.
Yeah, I can answer that. Good evening, everyone. The valuation is determined to some degree by the developer. We do have a square foot multiplier that we have adopted by council that we use as well. But usually it's a dollar amount based upon construction costs provided by the developer.
When you say developer, are you speaking on residential as well or just commercial?
Sorry, both.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, and then I just want to get clarification, Greg. So if someone's in the middle of a project now, and we adopt this ordinance, and you said 45 days, whatever it is, the clock starts from them at zero. Then they have, let's say, a $500,000 project has 18 months to complete.
That's correct.
What's going on? Someone who may be mid-project right now.
Yeah, that's correct. It would be it would start from the effective date, but we've built in some given the current situation that we're in, we built in some flexibility, and we added, actually added pandemics to it because of the current situation as a justification for not being able to complete your construction. So I would anticipate that we might, if people aren't able to finish, they might point to the inability to do construction right now.
Okay. And then on the fines, just because I want to understand sort of the daily fines if you're going past that 18 months, and there's you said sort of 500, 750, and 1,000 a day. How does that compare to other communities? Because that seems pretty high to me to be sort of, if you're doing residential construction and someone's now all of a sudden paying, I mean, I guess we want to encourage them to get finished, but it's pretty significant.
I don't have all that data with me, but I seem to recall that we used the typical fines that other cities imposed and kind of turned it into a formula for a typical project, so that your typical home remodel project is similar to what other cities are charging, but just on a dollar amount. So if I'm being clear, I think most of the other cities are, for those mid-level projects are about the same as what we're imposing. And they have the same regime, but just instead of having a percentage, it has dollar amounts and the fines increase. I do recall that in Atherton, they have many projects that just pay the fines when they can't complete it because they're pretty complex.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to have Sarah talk in a second, but I just want to remind the public that you're free to call in. You can dial 301-715-8592. The meeting ID is 452-388-965. It's on your screen. And even though we're going to take more questions from our council members of staff, if a call comes in, I will be notified and you can make your comment. So, Sarah.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this question might be for Chris. My question is, it has to do with the penalty fees. And I'm wondering, would an applicant be subject to a penalty fee and an extension fee if they miss their allotted time period? And if, say, a homeowner self-reports that they're not going to meet their deadline, in that case, would they not pay the penalty fee? They'd only pay the extension fee? I'm wondering how that works.
Still familiarizing myself with the ordinance here. I don't think you'd be paying both. Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg.
Well, they don't come in at the same time.
Right.
So the extension fee would be the first fee that someone would encounter if they had a need to extend beyond the base time limits of the ordinance, and only after they've exhausted all their extensions do they get into the penalty part. And in both cases, we have a process for people to explain why and try to get relief.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then I had one other question. I noticed that reasons that are not considered beyond the owner's control for requesting an extension include supplier problems. I'm just wondering if you could give me a little more explanation behind why that's included, supplier problems.
I can answer that.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, sorry. We had an example recently with a project, a new single family where they had I believe it was a 6 or 9 month delay in windows. That's an example of that for whatever reason. And it had to do with, I'm not sure if it was availability of materials or just a production lag time on the window manufacturer's part, but it was a fairly significant delay in the window aspect of that project.
And so we would be penalizing the homeowner in that case for something that's kind of out of their control.
No, I don't believe we would. Correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, here, but I think that would be an example of something that would be outside of the property owner or builder's control.
Was that a question for Greg?
I think
Yeah,
Greg.
my connection just went away for a second, so I came back. I did not hear the question.
So, okay, I'll repeat.
That was,
So my question.
it was like 30 seconds where I was
okay.
frozen. You guys were all frozen. I looked fine.
My question was, I'm trying to find the item. Under the extension portion of the ordinance, and it's about the building official may waive an extension fee for certain reasons. You mentioned the pandemic language, but then the last sentence in that says reasons that are not considered beyond the owner's control include supplier problems. And so then Chris just gave the example of a homeowner whose windows were delayed for 6 to 9 months, and that I'm just trying to understand why supplier problems would kind of set up a homeowner to be penalized when really a window supplier issue is not, that's out of the homeowner's control.
Yeah, well, that was kind of a policy point where where I think the Planning Commission and staff were looking at this and looking what other cities have in their ordinances. And I think the thought was that homeowners sometimes, when they're doing it, and I'm not picking on homeowners, commercial owners too, sometimes don't have a good critical path on their project. And so they wait too long to order the materials when they could have ordered it earlier. And that to me seemed like not poor management of a project is actually what we're trying to deter with this ordinance, as opposed to giving it an additional excuse. Another example might be somebody orders some product that, they know it's going to take 9 months to get delivered because it's some special granite from somewhere or other, and it just takes a long time. And that just didn't seem like a reasonable excuse when it's something in their control. Now, I suppose there could be, I think some of the other exceptions could encompass a supply problem, like if a pandemic put down the factory that makes your product or the appliances that you're going to put in your house, then I think that would be a legitimate reason.
Okay, thank you.
Laura.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. So a couple of my questions have been asked already, which is great. With respect to the timing of this, I want to better understand what Greg, you were talking about earlier in terms of, from the time that this goes into effect, that it will impact projects that are currently underway. And so, there's two things going on, obviously the pandemic right now. And then I'm also expecting, with the fact that most construction is shut down, that there's going to be extremely high demand for construction when the shelter in place is lifted. So could you help me understand a little bit of the timeline in terms of when you expect this to take effect, and when the earliest potential penalty could be levied?
Yeah. So on the smaller projects, the $200,000 to $1 million project, it would be 18 months from the effective date, plus the 2 extensions. So it's quite a ways into the future that somebody could be affected by the ordinance.
Thank you.
All right. Is that all the questions you had, Laura? Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Greg, I have to admit, after all the time you and I spent talking about this afternoon, I have a new question for you. It didn't occur to me. Is there a regulatory or statutory reason why we have to have the first couple of tranches of this set up the way they are? What I'm getting at, for example, is could we simply establish a set of rules that the lowest size of a project that it kicks in on is a $2 million project, just to pick a number out of the air. So any project under $2 million, it basically this new regulation doesn't apply to, and we would simply, I guess by default, use whatever procedure we have in place today.
Was that question directed to me, Councilmember Olbert?
Yes, it was.
Okay. I'm having trouble with my connection. I'm sorry. I cut out again. There, you know, that these this is a recommendation that you could set the thresholds at any level you think is reasonable. If you think you would like smaller, if it's all a matter of what we define as a relatively small project. So if we define $2 million as a relatively small project, then we could exempt those from it. That'd be, in my mind, like a major large home. A large home remodel in San Carlos at current amounts would probably be a $2 million project. And there's probably outliers to that, even, you know, on a steep hillside or something like that with a lot of engineering. But yeah, you could have a different threshold than what's been recommended.
Thank you, Greg. I do have one other idea when we get to discussion that I want to bring up, Mr. Mayor, but I just mentioned in case people want to think about it, maybe one of the ways to deal with some of the concerns people have about impacting individual homeowner projects is simply to set that first threshold high enough that it's not going to apply to most of them. As I recall, this was all triggered by a particular project of a multifamily nature that was just dragging on and on and on and on. So you know, the focus is on that, not necessarily on individual projects.
All right. I think, Greg, the only question I have is we're not the first city to impose time limits. Well, I mean, the other cities that have put this kind of an ordinance in place, have they run into too many issues, or has it been pretty manageable? I think maybe Greg's connection might be spotty again.
Yeah, let me take that one.
Oh, Jeff, that's fine.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Sure.
No, we haven't heard that there's been issues with communities that have had this ordinance. It doesn't get triggered all that often, and we wouldn't expect this one to be triggered all that often either. It's really for outlier type projects.
Sure. Okay. All right. Crystal, did anyone call in?
No, we didn't receive any calls for this.
I'm sorry?
No calls have been received.
All right. Okay, any other questions of staff before I entertain a motion to close the public hearing? No one's jumping to their microphone, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Do we need a voice vote on this?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Okay, please call the roll.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parmer Lohan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
And Mayor Collins?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to need an introduction of the ordinance.
I move to introduce ordinance number
1560.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos adding Chapter 15.60 Construction Time Limits to Title 15 of the San Carlos Municipal Code for construction time limits and penalties.
All right. And we have a second by Sarah. Okay. Discussion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mark.
I was wondering whether or not the motion and seconder, whether there would be any interest in considering granting the Planning Commission more flexibility on solely on the largest type projects, the $10 million plus projects, such that they could pick a reasonable construction time limit based on facts and circumstances, perhaps not to exceed 48 months, but not to have a hardwired number in there, because these big projects are often complex. So I just was curious if there was any interest in tweaking the motion that way.
Laura, I think you made the motion.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, it seems to me that this is well thought out. There's examples in other communities across the peninsula. So unless there was other data to present that and a different approach were to be taken, I would be open to it, but I haven't heard any. And it just seems like it's a fairly stepwise approach. I'm open to other council members' perspective on that.
Adam, your hand was up. You want me to unmute yourself? Adam, you want to? There you go.
I had other discussions, but I'm happy to comment on this. I guess my understanding was that some of those bigger projects might be phased in, but I don't know, are you talking about just a single project that's $10 million that wouldn't be sort of phased like the transit village? That's what I'm trying to understand. Because I think it would have its own.
Mark, I think he was having some audio difficulties there.
Oh, yes. I mean, that could be an example of it. There could be other examples of it too. It's just a thought that had occurred to me I wanted to bring up because in my limited experience, where it gets really difficult to project construction times is on some of the very large projects.
Well, I guess the question is what we have accommodating enough or liberal enough? And I'm not completely sure, but it sounds like the Planning Commission addressed that. Jeff, did that come up, or Greg, did these larger projects come up as issues when the Planning Commission was discussing them? This particular ordinance?
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion about what the thresholds would be. I think that's one of the things that was changed. And the 10 million number, I think, was intended to encompass the larger projects. And I think this may have come up at the meeting, but the thought was that the larger projects are the more sophisticated developers who should really have a good timeline and critical path on when they're going to complete their project, and just and organize the project in a way to comply with the ordinance. And Chris, you might add something if you have anything about what's our experience with larger projects and how they've met kind of these.
Sure. Actually, the Landmark, Transit Village, and Wheeler all were completed, or at least had the appearance of being completed within 40 to 42 months. So 3.5 years, give or take, a couple months. Interesting, all those three were within a 40 to 42 month timeline.
Okay. All right. So I'm sorry, was there something else that you were going to add, Greg?
No.
Okay. All right. So Laura, still feel the same?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, unless there's like concrete examples of where this wouldn't work, again, I think we say this every time we pass an ordinance, is that, we can always change it in the future, but it seemed pretty thought out to me and well researched. So,
yeah.
I get one point on that, Ron. I guess to Chris, I guess on Chris's point, though, he had mentioned that some of those larger projects were taking 40 to 42 months, right? And we have a 36-month and then a 6-month extension with some fines. Is that right? How it's set up right now?
Yeah, I thought the large projects, I just didn't remember. I'm sorry.
It says 36-month time limit for 10 million plus.
Yeah. So plus there's the 2 extensions. So that would take them to 42 months.
And those extensions have fines associated with them, right?
They're not fine. They're extension fees.
Okay.
They would need to pay, And then the fines kick in after all the extensions are exhausted.
So, Mark, do you still have some concerns, or is based on what you've heard, do you feel any differently?
Short answer is no, but that's simply because I was aware of the information ahead of time. I guess the only additional thing I'd mention is in the context of the examples of times that Chris was sharing. It's a little interesting to have a construction time limit where you sort of on a number of the projects of that scale we've experienced, you have to use the extensions. In other words, because the extensions I had assumed are for unforeseen circumstances, and we're sort of saying, well, even in an ordinary course of business, you're going to have to use them, or you're going to have to pay fines. So, but I don't want to sidetrack the discussion tonight. It was simply an idea that I thought I didn't have a problem giving the Planning Commission a little bit more flexibility. But if we don't want to do that, we don't want to do that. That's fine.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this? All right.
I had one item that I wanted to raise. I just want to follow up on Sarah's comment on the supplier piece, because I do think that's, I mean, I'd love to see the motion include something that gives the supplier issue discretion to the building official to decide on, versus having it not be an item. I mean, you talked about the window thing, but I mean, we had steel tariffs last year that may have impacted things that were out of people's controls. I mean, we had to put steel in our project, and we got in before what happened, but I could imagine that outside factors, even no matter how early you ordered, could impact things. So to me, I don't think you should. I think it should just go to the building official's discretion is something I would prefer to see, than have the supplier item not be a possible exemption or something for Chris to consider.
So let me ask you this. Just going on what Adam said, let's take a project like I always call it the Cherry Chestnut project, with the switch to steel and the extended timeline of this project. Had this ordinance been in effect at that time, how would that have affected it?
Is that for me, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I was actually for Chris, but
Okay.
Either one of you want to answer it, I'm happy with that.
Well, I think the Chris, I'll just start, and then you can, because you're experienced on dealing with the project. Not this. I want to keep it hypothetical and not really focus on one project, but let's a project that historically just took a long time because of decisions made by the developer. We'll call it that. So one of the purposes of this ordinance is to force developers to take into account what could happen if they take too long. So if I had that kind of an effect in that hypothetical project where someone was making a decision to change the design or change the building materials or whatever is going on with their decision-making process, they're going to have to think about, well, if we do that, then it's going to take us longer, and we're going to likely get into this penalty phase. So it's intended to be a deterrent, and people make business decisions. So if they get into the penalties, that'll be part of their, it ultimately would be a business decision.
Right.
And then the other question about taking the supplier problems out of and moving it into one that could be a good faith reason. I mean, that's again just a policy, and we could move supplier problems. I see that we have customer imported material. I think that was the example I used where someone was might have made a decision on their project that was pretty obvious that if the lead time was 9 months just to get the materials, I think we were thinking that's not really a good excuse. But supplier problems, hey, that's a broad subject matter that you could argue that if there's tariffs or other reasons that led to the delay, then the building official might you might want to give the building official discretion to waive the extension fee on those grounds.
Anything you want to add on that, Chris?
No, not really. I think Greg explained that about as best as I could.
All right. So final question. I mean, based on the way this is crafted and the Planning Commission's work on it, are you comfortable with it as something you can work within?
I am. Yes, I am. But my one concern that was more of a recent discovery was the larger projects that did take the longer timeline, yet we're still moving along at a really good clip. They were calling for inspections and progress was being had. And that's where I was reading into this that, due to the complexity and size of the project, that it wouldn't really necessarily fall into play here, but because they are moving along and getting things done. And hopefully I'm not misreading this ordinance in that respect. So I don't know, Greg, I apologize for putting us on the spot here, but I just want to make sure that, we're projects that are moving along and getting completed within what we would consider a reasonable timeline aren't necessarily being penalized. That's frankly, as a building official, that's my primary concern.
I think that section is I think it's intended to give you some ability to waive the extension fee when there's something particular about the project you can point to that allows you to say, well, this was a more difficult, it was a complex project, and they're making reasonable progress. It gives you some discretion to make the call on those extension fees. It's just the penalties get into the appeal area and not your discretion.
Okay.
Yeah, I think our concerns are primarily, the concept of unintended consequences. And yes, we can always go back and revisit these things, but it is kind of nice to get them right the first time. So, but it sounds like there's enough flexibility built in.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have to admit, I'm trying to parse this most recent discussion within the context of the question that you had asked a few minutes ago about the Cherry Chestnut project, which in some respects was sort of a spark behind this whole effort. Had these things been in place, Chris, would you have had the resources to be able to go to the developer and say, you're out of compliance?
I believe I would have had that with the language in this ordinance, yes.
Okay, and you wouldn't have felt compelled to grant extensions and stuff automatically?
Not necessarily. Yeah, I think the ordinances would have addressed the concerns.
Okay, good. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, because giving staff flexibility is important. On the other hand, as you well know, if we don't set things out fairly clear, that also means that there could be a whole bunch of people angry at you. This is not what we're trying to do.
Mr. Mayor, there's one other point in the ordinance that I didn't underline, but if we ever were to have a project that got into the penalty phase and still was not getting near completion, there is a remedy built into this that I can go to court to have it declared a public nuisance for not being completed on time. And when that happens, the remedy is that a court starts issuing orders to do things. And so that's kind of the most extreme remedy that we would have, but it's I could envision a project that might be required if somebody is obstinate and not complying.
Okay. Sarah and then Laura, I'd kind of like to wrap this up, move it to a vote. So Sarah?
Yeah, I just wanted to check back on where we stood with Adam's suggestion. I agree with him. I think that the fire issue is a gray area, and so I too would like to move that into the discretion of the building official.
Okay. Laura?
Yeah, so I guess from my perspective, a couple of things. I have never met a homeowner undergoing a remodel that didn't want the project done quickly. And in terms of the larger size projects, again, with the magnitude of the dollars that are at stake with those particular projects, again, I would imagine that those larger projects, again, are highly incentivized already to move expeditiously forward through that project. So I just wanted to share that those two perspectives. And then as far as the supplier issue, I would love a little bit of guidance if the expectation is that staff would take your input and provide more specificity in it, and we move the motion as it move to a vote with the motion as it is, or is the expectation that we alter the language to the resolution?
I think I could take that. I think what I hear is being intended by Councilmember Rack and McDowell is that we move the and supplier problems to the discretionary side, part of that paragraph, so that the building official can consider that. And that would just be in the form of an amendment to the motion, and then the seconder could decide whether to accept that amendment.
So Laura, did you want to add that amendment? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm happy to add that amendment. I'm just not quite sure how to word it. So,
well, this is the first reading of the ordinance, so I think if the request is to move that into the discretionary side, we'll bring back the final language with that general statement in your motion. We can bring back the ordinance for adoption with the corrected language, looking at the supplier problems. If there's anything particular you want, a qualifier or something to attach to supply problems, I mean, we probably want to mention it tonight. You know.
Yeah, so I'll leave that to the
outside the control of the property owner or something like that. You could move that over, but I don't know. I'm just making a suggestion.
Sarah and Adam, since you debated this earlier, if you have
Sarah, you were the seconder.
I would just like to approve the motion with the amendment as discussed with staff.
Okay. All right. Okay. If there's nothing else, Crystal, would you like to call the roll, please?
For this, Mayor, I just want to make sure that the mover and then the seconder on that one. So Sarah, is that what we're doing? I just want to make sure we did that because I wasn't quite sure on the record that happened at Laura.
Yes, so moved as proposed by Sarah.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay.
I seconded her on.
I second my second.
Jeff, is our guidance clear as mud?
We get it. We can.
Well, I mean, it was a pretty interesting conversation in terms of clarity, but from a high level, I understand exactly what the council's looking for. So I think mission accomplished.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we muddled through. All right, Crystal.
Vice Mayor Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack? Oh, I think he might have frozen. Nope.
Oh, he's coming back.
Back to him.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
And Mayor Collins?
Yes. Okay. Good job. We kind of beat that one to death. All right, we're going to move on to new business 11A, consideration of introducing an ordinance amending the San Carlos Municipal Code Chapter 8.10 minimum wage, sections 8.10.030 and 8.10.040, delaying implementation of the local minimum wage increase to January 1, 2021.
Good evening, Council. Nicole Scott, Senior Management Analyst. So tonight, the item before you is the consideration of introducing an ordinance amending Chapter 8.10 minimum wage to delay the implementation of the increase to January 1st, 2021.
So, Nicole, there's really no changes. We're just delaying this, correct?
Yeah, Crystal, how do I go to the next slide?
You should have control. There it goes.
There it is.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was a one-slide presentation.
That would have been a very short
Wishful
presentation.
thinking.
So this item is coming before you in response to the financial hardships experienced by the San Carlos businesses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So since the issuance of the shelter-in-place order, a lot of the businesses have had to close their doors or limit their hours of operations. And the date when the businesses will be able to reopen is unknown at this time, but it's likely that the businesses will be slowly returning to their levels, maybe not to the levels that existed before in terms of employment. So with that in mind, the proposed ordinance delays the implementation of the minimum wage increase from July 1st of this year to January 1st, 2021. The proposed ordinance, it eliminates the $15 an hour step that was planned for July, and instead it goes to $15 an hour plus CPI at a maximum of 3.5% on January 1st. And then moving forward, the increases will happen as planned each year on January 1st. And the proposed ordinance tonight, it doesn't recommend any other changes to the policies or requirements. It's just the change in the implementation schedule. And I guess it was just a short presentation. That's it.
Ron, you're muted.
Thank you, Greg. We're going to do the same thing. Ask the public to please call in, just in the interest of time. I think maybe we'll take some questions from my fellow council members, and then Crystal, just notify me if a call comes in. But if the public is seeing this screen, please do call in and put in the meeting ID. Mark, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nice job, Nicole, and thank you for keeping it short and sweet. I think my question is actually probably more for Jeff. I'm interested in whether or not staff considered looking at other options that would benefit local businesses that are feeling the stress of COVID-19 rather than deferring the minimum wage increase. For example, declaring some form of sewer fee, garbage fee, permit fee holiday for some period of time. That would obviously impact our reserves, our general fund reserves. But I'm curious about whether staff had looked at that, and if so, why that was not considered as an option.
No, we did not look at that. It wasn't considered as an option. I don't think anybody, including the city council, has talked about any of those things. So that was not on the radar.
Okay, thank you. I'll come back to that when we get to discussing it.
All right. Crystal, has anybody called in?
I am not seeing any callers at this time.
So far. Okay. Any other questions from my fellow council members? I am not seeing any hands raised. All right, shall we give this maybe another few seconds, Crystal, to see if anybody does call in?
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, let's give this 30 seconds. Anybody having issues, you can still call in 301-715-8592. Enter the meeting ID when prompted, 452-388-965. Any attempts you're seeing, witnessing, Crystal?
Nothing is coming in. I think we're good to close out.
Okay, I think we, at this point, we're gonna need a motion.
I move to introduce ordinance number
1561.
an ordinance of the City Council of the City of San Carlos amending San Carlos Municipal Code, Chapter 8.10, minimum wage, Section 8.10.030 and 8.10.040, delaying implementation of the local minimum wage increase to January 1st, 2021.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
second? Second, Mark or Adam? All right, motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I am a little concerned that what we're basically doing here, even though I recognize this is only a short-term deferral, but we're essentially putting a burden that we were trying to cure and had been looking to try and cure for some time, or at least to make an adjustment to, on the backs of people who are the least well positioned in society to sustain it. I brought up the other options that we could consider doing, because we couldn't consider doing them tonight. They would require additional work to pursue. And they would certainly cost the general fund of the city or our reserves some money. I'm not opposed to doing that. I'm not opposed to the philanthropic efforts that we've established to help local businesses and to help local homeowners and renters that are having difficulty. What I'm concerned about, frankly, is doing something that it's taking advantage of the people who are least able to afford this and are least able to try and lobby us to look for a different answer. And it does not sit well with me.
Okay, Adam?
Thank you, Mayor Collins. I just want to follow up and say, look, I think this is a good decision at this point in time, and we have a lot of unknowns, and a lot of businesses are hurting. The fact that we're sort of doing this cleanly and adding the CPI right on, we're not really getting ourselves behind overall. We're keeping pace with other neighboring towns. And I did want to say also, I appreciate all the work that's going on by a lot of minimum wage workers now, who are essential workers. And I would hope that those businesses who are operating and are running would consider making those changes now for those essential workers who are, out now and providing leave, paid leave, and things like increase in the wage towards $15.
All right, Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, Mark, I hear your concerns, and I struggled with this one too for many of the reasons that you outlined. And where I landed with this is, when I, for example, walk down Laurel Street, I noticed that there's just so many stores and shops and restaurants are shuttered. The practicality perspective of this, with a business owner, many of which probably reached out to San Mateo County Strong Fund today to submit an application. Are they really truly in a position to also implement a wage hike? So I'm purely looking at this issue as a timing issue, right? Is it really practical for us to move forward with the proposed date of July 1 under these circumstances? And that's kind of where I landed. And I hear Adam's suggestion that we are still keeping pace with the rest of the local communities on this one. So that's kind of what my thought process was.
We lost your, you suddenly got muted there for a second.
Yeah, because I did that to myself. Yeah, I think, it's just not an easy decision either way that you look at it, right? We are under the weight of this coronavirus outbreak, and the pressure is just enormous everywhere. So I don't think this is an easy decision, no matter how you look at it.
Sarah.
you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo Adam and Laura's comments, and I think that moving this implementation date is trying to be sensitive to the fact that so many of our businesses are just really hurting right now. And like Laura, I struggled with this too. So I'm supportive of delaying it until January to give our businesses some breathing room. But I want to just return to the fact that wages in our county have just not kept pace with the skyrocketing cost of living. And so when our workers do go back to work, it's really important that they're supported and feel like they can earn enough to actually try to live in our communities. So I think it's important to continue to try to join our neighbors who have already increased the minimum wage and level that playing field a bit. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other comments,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I have a not alternative, but an amendment to propose, or an amended resolution to propose, which I think we can do. Greg can, chime in if we can't. The amendment would be this: that we adopt a resolution as it is defined, but we do not apply it to the city. So in other words, starting July 1st, 2020, the city will pay whatever the minimum wage is that it would have paid if we had not delayed it. But we basically give a 6-month exemption to the local businesses, but we lead by example.
If I may respond to that, that would be unnecessary. Because we're a government agency, the council has to actually adopt our salaries. And if you might recall, we did that early. We did an early adoption of raising our salaries. So they're already raised to that $15 level.
Well, that's actually good news. Thank you for the reminder.
So good job. You just already did it.
No, what that means is there's absolutely no cost of any kind to including the amendment in the language.
Yeah, but that's true as well.
That is my amendment if anybody wishes to second
it. Does anyone care to second Mark's amendment? All right, I'm not hearing any takers.
Fair enough.
Okay, so I don't see any more discussion. So Crystal, please call the roll.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
No.
Vice Mayor Palmer Lohan?
Yes.
And Mayor Collins?
Yes. All right, with that, we move on to new business item 11B, consideration of adopting or a resolution appropriating $50,000 from the city's unassigned general fund balance for One Life Counseling Center.
Good evening, Mayor Collins and council members. Amy Newby, Parks and Recreation Director. Okay, so here we go tonight. This evening for your consideration is the appropriation of $50,000 to One Life Counseling Center for their distribution program to continue to provide groceries and other essential items for families in need. Some background about One Life Counseling. Sorry, just seeing if the slide will catch up. There we go. One Life Counseling Center is a local nonprofit organization providing counseling and wellness programs to families and individuals, and also partner with the San Carlos School District and other organizations to provide these services as well. In recent years, One Life has applied for and received funding through the city's nonprofit grant program to provide free and reduced cost counseling services. The goal of One Life's organization is to ensure that no one who needs counseling or other services are turned away, regardless of their ability to pay. Some background about the food distribution program that they operate. Before COVID-19, One Life was distributing about 400 pounds of food weekly to individuals and families they serve. This increased to about 4,000 pounds weekly within the last 4 to 6 weeks. And as you heard earlier tonight, it was up to 9,000 pounds of food this past week. Families primarily San Carlos, San Mateo, and Redwood City. And while some are not San Carlos residents, many of them work in San Carlos and are considered a part of our greater community. Food is delivered weekly to One Life by Second Harvest Food Bank, and other items are purchased to supplement what is not received in those deliveries, such as diapers, canned food, and other essential items. 2 weeks ago, 300 families arrived to pick up a bag of groceries, and unfortunately, One Life turned away 50 of them because they had run out of food. Well, they have worked out food quantities with Second Harvest. One Life shared with us how devastating it was to tell people they did not have enough food for them and don't want to have to turn away another family in need. About a week ago, One Life sent a letter to the city requesting funding to support the food and goods distribution due to the growing need in the community related to COVID-19. The city manager has approved $20,000 to One Life, and before you tonight is the consideration to appropriate an additional $50,000. If approved, funding will be used for additional food not provided by Second Harvest, such as dry goods and canned food, and to cover administrative costs. And I would like to share with you a video that of the effort that goes into the distribution program. And Crystal is assisting with that.
Talk about is what is going down and what's been messed up for us. When I look around, I see blue skies, I see butterflies for us. Listen to the sound and lose it in sweet music and dance with me. 'Cause there is beauty in the world, so much beauty in the world, always beauty in the world, so much beauty in the world. So shake your booty, boys and girls, for the beauty in the world. Pick your diamond, pick your pearl, there is beauty in the world. All together now. We need more money. They say change is gonna come. Like the weather, this ain't forever. They say, so baby, in between, notice the blue skies, notice the butterflies, notice me. Stop and smell the flowers and lose it in sweet music and dance with me. 'Cause there is beauty in the world, so much beauty in the world, always beauty in the world. There is beauty in the world, so shake your booty, boys and girls. Yeah, beauty in the world. Pick your diamond, pick your pearl, 'cause there is beauty in the world. All together now.
Thank you, Amy. Was there?
There we go. And so back to that. And so before you tonight is the consideration to adopt a resolution appropriating $50,000 from the city's unassigned general fund, One Life Counseling Center. I'm happy to answer any questions, but we also have with us tonight Michelle and One Life Counseling, who are also available to answer any questions.
Okay. I think, Chris, are you going to put up the public comment screen? Thank you. Do we have anybody is calling in yet on this item, Crystal?
I do not see any new callers.
All right, so the public comment screen is up. Anybody may call by dialing the number on the screen and entering the meeting ID. And while we are waiting, were there any questions by my fellow council members of staff or Michelle or Susie? Laura.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. Wonderful presentation, Amy. Thank you so much. Clearly, one of the silver linings in San Carlos that there's this amazing capacity and teamwork out there. I would love to hear from Susie. I spoke to you this weekend. You shared with me a little bit about the program and how the demand has been increasing every week, and why this is a special community. And I would love to hear you share your perspective on this with us this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, for having us here tonight. I first want to thank you guys personally. I think every single one of you has reached out personally to offer and extend help for this effort, which I can't thank you enough. It's been wonderful. We have wonderful council members in our community, and it's really reassuring. Usually we do primarily mental health and some food, and that's drastically changed in the last 4 weeks. Unfortunately, with shelter in place continuing on for another 4 weeks, I'm a little fearful of the increase in demand for food coming up just shortly here. So we want to meet that need as much as possible. We want to be there. The other interesting change that I've seen this week and just today is our increase in counseling services. So I have received that small surge that I was anticipating is starting to happen in our counseling service as well, as we've got 10 referrals today for counseling services, and they kind of lulled for a couple weeks, but now they're starting to increase, I think, as the stress has gone on. So we have these two fronts, really, the physical needs and the emotional needs that we're trying to meet. And we want to be able to be there for the community to meet both of those needs. And this will enable us to do that and provide things like diapers, which Second Harvest does not, they don't provide. Baby food is another thing that we get asked for as well. And even toilet paper and paper towels, napkins, they've been asking for too. So baby wipes is another big item. So this will enable us to do that in our community. And the secondary effects of this is it really reunites everybody in a way where they feel purpose again. And for me, that's mental health. And such a time where we feel useless and when we're operating with our hands behind our backs, only able to connect virtually, we get to connect and do something for the community, which I think is mental health in a way as well.
Thank you, Susie. Those are heartfelt comments. Well said. Any other questions or comments by my fellow council members? All right. I will just add, I intend to be there myself to distribute food Wednesday morning. If you need any extra help, my wife will come with me. So,
thank you.
All right.
Thank you. The community fund has been great. The volunteers have been phenomenal. I can't say enough about their instrumental inner workings with our volunteer, volunteer coordinated Sandy, and also just getting all the volunteers together. It's been phenomenal.
All right. Thank you again, Susie. I'm just.
I'm sorry. I have a comment that I wanted to include. I had trouble raising my hand, if I may.
Oh no, go ahead, Sarah. I didn't see you, but please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Susie and her team. I think that One Life is such a bright light in our community as a whole, and I want to thank you for all of your hard work. I've been volunteering there for the Friday distribution on the last couple of weeks, and I was there 2 weeks ago when unfortunately the food ran out, and I wanted to share with my colleagues what a heartbreaking moment that was for everyone. It was just devastating to have to turn around so many people who were just so disappointed and had children in the car. And a lot of them are, families that are coming through with children in the back seat. And, for me, it became very, very clear that times are desperate right now for so many people who are just really struggling to put food on the table. So I want to thank Susie and her team for all of their hard work. And I really feel like this is a time when this is an area where local government can step in and help in a big way. And so I'm looking forward to supporting this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Crystal informed me that we did not have anybody from the public who called in. And unless there are any other comments, I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt resolution 2020.
Sorry, I have too many paper here. 2020-021.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos appropriating $50,000 from the city's unassigned general fund to One Life Counseling Center.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, Crystal, please call the roll.
Councilmember McDowell?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parmalohan?
Yes.
Councilmember Rack?
Yes.
And Mayor Collins?
Yes. All right, great. And best of luck to you, Susie, and One Life.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your support.
You're quite welcome. Okay, we're going to move on now to item 12. We're going to come back to our reflections and agenda setting. But before we do, Mark informed me that he finally got the video that we were trying to show early in the meeting of Cheryl Greenspan. And Mark, are you able to bring that up now?
Yes.
Let me go.
Hang on a second.
This is approximately 3 minutes, so hopefully we should be done in time.
All right, hang on a second. It is coming up. Let me make it go full screen.
The mother and daughter duo, Cheryl and Shanna.
Were you guys hearing that or not?
Hearing it, but not seeing it.
Okay, hang on a second. Crystal, I think that means I need to do screen sharing, correct?
Yes.
And you've given me the ability to do that?
Yes, you should have that now.
Share screen. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if we do that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
The mother and daughter duo, Cheryl and Shanna Greenspan, have been doing community service projects together much of their lives. So when COVID-19 struck the Bay Area, the two women were eager to get involved. Being in a family of all doctors and nurses, Cheryl and Shanna wanted to help out by donating hundreds of handmade masks and snack goodie bags to first responders.
So my daughter started off, she's a registered dietitian at UCSF and just wanted to bring in some treats for the oncology unit in the ICU where she worked. And of course, my husband and I were right on board with that. She got such amazing thank yous, such heartfelt thank yous from people that we knew there was something bigger in this. So we opened it up to the community and it's taken off from there. As of Monday, we will have made 210 bags donated throughout the area.
I was inspired to make the goodie bags to bring snacks to my teams that I work with at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital, just to bring something nice to thank care of all of our patients. I think as a family who's always done a lot to give back and to fundraise and support different organizations that have been important to us, we've learned how really easy it is to get your community involved. It was really easy to see a lot of people come together and help each other, and I think that was more inspiring than anything else we've done.
I'm leading up the mask campaign for here where we collect, you saw the supplies outside. People come and get the supplies, make the masks, drop them, and then we bag them based on the requests from different hospitals. Our goal in helping the community through these rough times is to provide masks for people on the front lines, and that allows people to have hands-on help in giving back. If you can't be on the front line. You can certainly, if you have the skill to sew, you can make masks and feel really good about it. So the masks have benefited people at Lucille Salter Pepper Children's Hospital, San Mateo General Hospital, Mills Peninsula, in their cardiac cath lab and their mental health units. A few of the sheriff and police officers, we've given to them as well, and to EMS in our county, as well as EMS in Daly City.
I'm getting involved with donating because I like to give back to the community, and I have a number of fabric sample books of drapery materials and upholstery materials that we buy from different suppliers, and when the season's over, I like to donate them to a good cause.
I think the biggest thing is seeing the look on people's faces who didn't have supplies, whether it's a neighbor who's elderly or someone who's immune compromised or a hospital that's in need. Everybody is gracious and grateful, and it's just every time it's been touching. We believe in tzedakah. It's just a matter of taking something and paying it forward to somebody else. If someone gives to you, you give to them.
Reporting from Scott Center News, I'm Kiana Joyce.
Okay, let's see.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, well worth the wait.
Yep, great job. Okay, so again, thanks to Cheryl and her family. Hopefully they can watch this meeting online tomorrow or sometime later. All right, so we're basically now at 12A. We're going to come back to some of these agenda setting ideas that we talked about earlier in the evening. Mark, you had brought up your ideas, and maybe it might be a good idea to start with you, and so you could we could circle back to you and have you sort of remind us of what you'd like to see.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I'm not sure how much more there is to add to the two of them. They basically would involve, I would imagine, directing staff to either study and bring back to us, or study, consult with the appropriate commission and bring back to us modifications to regulations that would allow neighborhoods to request that their streets be closed down for some period of time, or on some regularly scheduled basis for kids and other people to ride their bikes on them, and otherwise use them as a recreational area. And then the other one really was the notion of temporarily closing the north few blocks of Laurel Street to traffic. We'd have to think about how cross traffic on like Cherry Street works, but we do similar things for Farmers Market. And basically to do that, to try and make it a more inviting place for people to come down and partake of takeout offerings, or like the pop-up hamburger stand that I think Greg St. Clair put together and whatnot. So that's basically what the two ideas are. It's not something we can decide tonight. It's whether or not there's interest in having staff work on it. How do you do it?
I was just thinking of potentially a way to sort of wrap this up into one package, and in other words, maybe talk in general about street modifications. That would sort of encompass your idea about, the expanding the block party regulations and the closing of parts of Laurel Street and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of it that way. They both involve closing streets, just sort of for different reasons in different streets. Yeah. Yes.
So I'd be interested in anybody else's thoughts. Sarah, your hand was up, but I don't know if that was from before or it's new.
I'm sorry, Ron, that was from before, but I don't know. If Jeff thinks that staff could provide something that isn't too time consuming, or I would be interested in discussing it.
All right. What do you think, Laura?
Adam, I think you were about to say something.
Go ahead, Laura. You can go first.
Yeah. So I think, I think in light of everything I've been hearing with respect to how we will be emerging from shelter in place. The expectation I have in my mind, at least, is that some form of social distancing will likely be required for some time. So I echo, I like your idea of how you're packaging it, Ron, in terms of street closure review. And Sarah, you said something compelling in terms of, if there's not too much staff time involved, right? Because I know you're trying to handle a lot under really constrained circumstances, but maybe, a general review of what are some potential options to maintain the health and safety of the community, provide a little bit of, relief.
Jeff, I had another idea. Is this something maybe we could just do an ad hoc committee on to sort of brainstorm?
Well, I think we're talking about maybe like 2 steps here, right? Because it seems like you want to agendize a conversation of this.
Right.
And then in that conversation, you would ultimately, as a council, give us direction. You can't really give us direction tonight.
No.
Obviously, because this isn't even on the agenda setting item in terms of advance notification. But yeah, I mean, if you want to have this discussion at your next city council meeting, obviously with the anticipation that some of these things are going to be going on for another month, be happy to have staff think about this for the next couple of weeks and be prepared to have a robust conversation with the council about it at our next meeting.
Okay. Adam, you had a thought there before.
Sure, yeah, I just want to chime in as well on this, Merrick. Just I think it's a good idea to move forward with this and place on the agenda. I think it's a worthwhile discussion to have, especially given the changing circumstances. And I noticed today, like just walking down the street trying to avoid people, it's I end up in the street half the time. So I think if we can look at some options and some street modifications, I think that's a good thing.
All right. It sounds like we've got a little bit of a consensus here. So
that definitely sounds like enough to put it on the next agenda for discussion.
All right. All right. Any other thoughts by my colleagues? Okay. Any staff comments on city administrative business?
Nothing additional this evening, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Well, we are at item 13, which is adjournment. So everybody have a great evening, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.